We'll call the September 15th, 2021 Swartz Creek Board meeting to order. And before we begin, I'd like to ask Sue Gould to do roll call of the board members, please.
Alicia Gardner. Present. Alyssa Parks.
Present.
Chuck Malky.
Present.
Carrie Germain.
Present.
Jessica Lenave.
Present.
John Sayer.
Present.
Brian Sapanik.
Present.
Thank you. Thanks to my fellow board members for your attendance. So thanks to our audience and for those folks watching online for attending tonight. And we have a very full agenda. I'm very excited about the report that we'll be receiving from some of our staff related to the summer school program. It'll be the first time this board has seen it, and we've been looking forward to it with great anticipation. So with that, I am going to offer up the opportunity. Oh, I'm going to do the Pledge of Allegiance. Yes, we are. Stand, please, for the pledge.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, now we will move along to public comment that is related to our agenda items tonight. If you'd like to address the board, please stand, state your name, and keep your comments to 3 minutes or less.
Leah Davis? You want me to come? Okay, that's good.
Please approach the podium. Thank you.
All right. Okay, when you take away a person's choice, you set yourself up for lawsuits. Let there be peace through free will. Stop destroying our children's liberty, stripping away a child's self-governing autonomy and ability to say no to what they know deep down is uncomfortable, is criminal. Their gut instincts tell them something is wrong and they know they are being controlled. You are desensitizing their will to protect themselves from oppressive forces and predators, expecting them to just fall in line to authority without questioning, no matter what or how unreasonable.
Ms. Davis, I'm going to interrupt you. I'm sorry. Could you tell us which item on the agenda that you're referring to?
I'm referring to unmasking our children.
So that's not on our agenda this evening.
Can I be heard still?
The opportunity to comment.
It is an issue.
Generally would be later in our meeting.
So you want me to step down and wait?
Yes, please.
Okay.
Thank you. Just to be fair. Thank
Okay.
you. Okay. Yes. Sure. So we do have the opportunity once at the beginning and once at the end of each meeting. You can comment publicly related to agenda items, those that are listed on the published agenda. And then at the end, you can speak more generally about different topics. Okay? Same rules, Ms. Davis. Thank you. Oh, sure. All right. Any other public comments related to our agenda? All right. Hearing none. We have a consent agenda before us. I would entertain a motion for approval.
So moved.
Brian? Support. Alyssa? Any comments or questions?
Madam President,
Yes, ma'am.
I would just like to add, it doesn't necessarily need to be added to the minutes, that I spoke publicly last meeting regarding the protection of our children, and I failed to add that we also have an obligation to protect our teachers. They are just as important to our role sitting here on the board.
Thank you. All right, with that, I'm going to ask Sue to do roll call, please.
Alyssa Parks.
Yes.
Alicia Gardner.
Yes.
Jessica Lenave.
Yes.
John Sayer.
Yes.
Carrie Germain.
Yes.
Chuck Malky.
Yes.
Brian Sapanik.
Yes.
7 yes.
Thank you. Motion passes. And now moving on to the very exciting beginning of the year superintendent report. Mr. Menka.
Thank you very much. I am very excited to report that we have seen our children back in classrooms and our staff back with our students. And I have to say the summer school presentation you're about to see will just really, I think, amaze you what our team has been able to accomplish, the talented people who are here tonight. But also, to start the school year, our staff have done a fantastic job, and our kids have done a fantastic job coming in with a lot of external forces, things that are outside of their control, you know, and they've come into a situation, many of whom, we were talking about this today, our early elementary students, for example, 2/3 of our early elementary school students have never been in school before in their lives. So in a typical year, you know, you have your kindergarten students who are learning the routines of school. Well, now you have multiple ages and grades of kids who are learning how to do school for the first time. Sometimes we take for granted how much challenge it is to get a child to stand in line and walk to the lunchroom. I will tell you, it's a work of art watching our staff pull that off, and our teachers are very talented. But this has provided a tremendous challenge for some of the kids that they were not normed or accustomed to what it was like to be in a school building. And so we're seeing a lot of things that we haven't seen before. You know, what is it like to be in school for the first time, but with a kid that's 1 or 2 years older than they normally are when they start school. So they've had habits that they've developed if they were online or hadn't been socialized with other students because of COVID. And so the reality is it's created a really difficult challenge for us. But all that being said, it's so great to see our students back in school. I have a number of things to update you on, so I'll try and keep moving quickly. I do want to let you know as a board that the Michigan Association of School Boards, your organization, has an annual leadership conference that's occurring on Thursday, November 11th through Sunday, November 14th. They have both in-person options as well as virtual options. So if you're interested in attending some of those sessions, Sue can help get you connected to that. But I would strongly encourage you to get active with the Michigan Association of School Boards. They have some great information. They're your support organization. And I think there's a lot of great classes that they're offering there with some really interesting speakers. Our bond projects are moving along very well. We were able to start school. We passed all inspections, met our deadlines in terms of our bond situation. We met all of our deadlines in terms of getting our buildings open on time, which is fantastic. We also are moving along quite quickly at the middle school and high school with our exterior additions. So the office, the safe office additions, as well as the STEM additions are going forward. And the real challenge right now is it's a race to get to November 1st. And the reason why I say that is because if we can get the masonry done on the blocks as well as the bricks for those additions prior to November 1, then it's the best chance that we won't run into winter conditions where they have to, you know, worry about the freezing temperatures for their water and their mortar and things like that. So if we can hit that, and right now we're on track to do so, that will mean that we'll be able to enter into the winter enclosing those spaces, and then they can work on the insides in order to prepare them for hopefully being able to be unveiled this spring and yet this school year, which is fantastic. A couple other items to update you on, and we've talked at different times about this. The traffic to start the school year has been not good. We have struggled with our transportation, and more so than we have in previous years, and we've been trying to figure out what it is. What we know is that we've had 22 bus drivers in previous years. This year, we are entering the year with 13. We were able to find a qualified applicant. It's a very difficult thing to do these days. We're up to 14 drivers, which helps because it lowers the number of students on each bus. But interesting and ironically, one of the largest challenges we're facing are the number of families that are driving their children to school. And what we're finding when we talk to parents is that it's twofold. So some parents are saying, I'm not comfortable placing my child on a bus with 30, 40, 50 students. Doesn't seem safe to me, so I prefer to drive them. The other group is saying, I don't prefer to put my child on a bus because I don't want them to have to wear a mask while they're riding to school. So two very different reasons, but two reasons nonetheless. And what is interesting is that our schools are not really designed for parent drop-off. These school buildings and the sites were built 50 years ago in many cases. And so One of the biggest challenges we're facing right now is how do we get the traffic through at an expeditious rate and do it safely? So we have posted, the postings will go out tomorrow. We met today with our operations team. We're going to be posting for traffic guards. Traffic safety officers is what we're calling them. And we're hoping that maybe there's somebody in the community that would be interesting at every building to help us facilitate the flow of traffic in the morning. It's, believe it or not, it's a very complicated and logistical challenge. So those postings will go out tomorrow, and we're hoping that we'll have some interested people. It's just a part-time position, but might be somebody that's doing another role that might like to add a few more hours to their day and help us with getting traffic in and out of the buildings as quickly as possible. I will say I'm very thankful for our staff that's been very good about making sure it's still as safe as possible for kids. There are a lot of challenges outside of our control, road construction in the village at Cyrene, for example, construction going on at the middle school and high school, but we're working through those things. So just know that it's not great news to report, but we're trying to remedy it with different staffing and seeing if we can't remedy the situation. So next year, this particular lot, which is probably the lot of highest need, I mean, most people would agree that if you drive through this lot, there's a number of potholes that can take the front end of your vehicle off. So it's important to try and get that remedied. So next year that will be taken care of, as well as Moorish and Deke, which are two buildings that have struggled as well with traffic. So that is something that's being actively worked on. Appreciate our families' patience as we kind of work through that. One of the things in my superintendent report, I know that I've communicated out to families. The Genesee County Health Department has issued an order that students will be masked. I don't think it's any question the district's position on this, but prior to the order being made and going into the school year and even starting the school year, our position was that it would be parents' choice. That decision was taken out of our hands by the county health department, and so we are legally bound, and we have checked with multiple legal counsel to find that that is in fact the case, that we are legally held to that standard. So the Genesee County Health Department has the authority under the Public Health Code to issue these types of orders. The school district does not have the ability to simply ignore them, but I think if you look at the pattern of how we have handled things both through the pandemic and even leading up to this year, certainly our choice and our direction has been consistently that we would provide parent choice in their child's education, and that we would also follow the guidance of the health department as we were required to do by law. So we've stayed consistent with that as the other Genesee County schools have. That has not come without certain levels of conversation and dialogue at our level with the officials at the county health department to let them know about some of the challenges with that. And we continue to meet with them on a weekly basis to discuss those challenges. I will tell you, and I believe Mr. Melke had asked about the number of cases that we have in the schools, and I think that's a very relevant question. Right now, currently, we have one positive case at the high school for our staff. We have 2 positive cases of students. We have 8 positive cases of students. And at the middle school, we have 4 student cases, and we have 3 staff cases. We have recorded 3 student cases at Elms, 3 student cases at Moorish, 2 staff cases at Moorish, and those are our numbers to this point. If you go to our website, there's a COVID-19 dashboard that's been refreshed. This year, we're following the guidance of the legislature and what we have to report, and we are reporting current positive cases for both staff and students, as well as a cumulative total positive cases of students and staff, and that can be found real time as they occur on our website. Additionally, we are required by law to report probable positive cases of staff and probable positive cases of students, and that's when the health department notifies us that there is a student living in the same household as somebody who has a positive case and they have deemed them to be probable. So little information on the COVID dashboard. Yes?
Thank you for that. I know I asked you that.
Mm-hmm.
One quick question, and I don't know if it's pertinent. I'm sorry.
So, yeah.
Sorry, I forget the buttons. So with that being said, and we can't get into people's privacy, but I think the board would like to know this if it's possible, or at least I would. If we get these numbers for our district, can we figure out who's been given a shot with the staff and who hasn't? And I don't even know if that's pertinent, but I think it's good to relay that information out to the public so there is a fairness and education and honesty and transparency, because there's so much going on in the world with the politics of it all. We can't control that, but we can control our district to see if we could do that. And I don't know if it's possible or not.
Sure, so you're saying, can we find out how many of our people have been vaccinated, is that what you're saying?
Yes, sir.
Yes,
Basically, that's it, and I think that would be informational to the board to help us make decisions in the future.
Certainly, yeah, so we have voluntarily, certainly asked staff members if they want to share that information with us. One thing we know is that the district was very active in helping our staff that wanted to get vaccinated last year, and so we certainly know those staff members, and I would tell you that the majority of our staff did participate in the district's facilitation of vaccinations last year. I can tell you that what we know is that the majority of our staff are vaccinated. To give you the exact number, it would be tough, but it is well over 50%.
Okay.
And we also have a number of students who are vaccinated, and one of the things that we do as a means of education around that is certainly if a student is deemed to be a close contact, how would we handle that? Well, it's possible that if the student had received the vaccination, obviously it's only approved for children over 12 at this time, that they would avoid the ability to have to quarantine. So yes, I think we, certainly could have some more data on that if you're interested.
Yeah, I don't want to get in anybody's privacy, but if it's volunteered, I think it'd be educational for us to know that and help us make decisions in the future. Thank you.
In one kind of related point to what you were asking, we've been asking the health department, essentially the question is, listen, regardless of people's perspective, if people are masked, so if we're doing masks, and the conversation at the health department is masks are a primary defense to the virus, if that's the case, then we are asking the health department to stand behind that then and help us reduce the number of kids that have to quarantine. Because if we're masking kids and then we're also quarantining kids, now we're hitting things from two angles.
You're getting where I'm going.
And so I think one of the things that has been very helpful, and I'm going to send an update out to parents on Friday because I don't have all the final information, but in our health department meeting today, we were successful in kind of negotiating that. And it sounds like our health department is going to allow as option, so if we have a close contact, for example, a student that would normally be quarantined for 10 days, would have the option to take an antigen test for 7 days, and with a negative test for 7 consecutive days, they could stay in school each day.
Great.
So we're trying to basically say, if this is what we have to do, can we at least not have kids out of school? And so far, there's benefit to those conversations. So I think there's going to be more information shared this week about how that could be an option. And so now, of course, we have to mobilize our staff to be able to say, all right, well, there's got to be a training and there's got to be tests that are ordered and we've got to have that available. But there's also going to be an option for an at-home test, which parents could actually, if they chose to go out and say, I want to, I'll do this for my own child, we could do that. But if it's done at the school, it would be early in the day before they go into the population. And then we would have an opportunity with negative tests for 7 consecutive days, they wouldn't have to quarantine. That 7th day, they would need to go get a PCR test, which is a more robust test, but then they could come back to school and never have had to have been quarantined. So that's very positive compared to, last year we had thousands of quarantines, which wreaks havoc on learning. I mean, it's very difficult to do. So that was very positive news, and the health department's going to work with us on that.
Thank you. That's a great option.
Yeah. Also, just want to bring everybody up to speed, and I sent a message out to the parents at the high school on Friday. We had a student protest that surrounded masks, and I want to just kind of update the board and obviously the community. We had a number of students and their parents that organized a peaceful protest to stage a student-led walkout, at 10 o'clock in the morning. One of the things that I will highlight is that we have had student protests for decades and eons. It's a First Amendment right of a person in this country to be able to have the right to free assembly and to protest. We do not infringe on that right, but one of the things I think is important is that people understand that we have to be extremely consistent in how we handle that. So we've had walkouts for George Floyd, we've had walkouts for BLM, we've had walkouts for gun violence, we've had walkouts for masks. Regardless of the activity, the school has to be consistent and remain neutral. So we have done that. And so we do not endorse or promote. We had parents saying, well, why didn't you notify us about this protest? There are a number of reasons that we don't do that, and one of them is because it's not our game. We're not organizing a protest. And people will say, well, are students allowed? Absolutely, students are free to do that. And so how does that work? They're not disciplined, but that is coded as an absence when they walk out. There's not discipline expressed, but at the same time, we have to accurately report that they were not in class for that period of time. That's consistent with how we've handled every other protest. Everything went very well up until everybody was very peaceful, and then after a couple hours, we did have a couple individuals take it upon themselves at the ill advice of our administration, and our administration trusted and let them into our makeshift entrance because we're under construction. And those people did go into the building, and we had the police officers and the administrators walk with them and essentially make sure at no time that students were going to be in the hallways. And unfortunately, it's the first time, in our protests that we've had somebody that has been disrespectful and disorderly. It's unfortunate that happened. And I think in my memo, I highlighted the fact that these are things that we've dealt with and that nobody was in danger. But I think it's fair to say that some of our kids were concerned. And I don't want to downplay, the way that some of our kids may have been feeling in that moment. And I think it's, a plea and an unfortunate reality that, exists, that we are under a lot of political pressures. And our job is to come in here and do what's best for kids every day. And our teachers and our staff are trying to do that work as best they can. Our administrators are trying to do that the best they can. We are under things that are outside of our control, and we are doing our best to manage those. And we just appreciate the heck out of all of our families that understand that, support what we're trying to do, and that is to love on their kids every day that they walk through the doors. And so I'm also appreciative in all of our protests, the students that have figured out and the families and parents that have figured out how to do it respectfully, to make sure their voices are heard, to exercise their First Amendment rights, and to do it peacefully without creating a disruption and a distraction. And we will not tolerate that, and we will take it very seriously if any of our students potentially have their learning rights infringed upon. So we also ultimately would like to say thank you to those that were peaceful and that did it properly, as well as the other protests that have occurred. And we hope that we can continue to keep a neutral approach. Our approach is consistent, and it will remain consistent as we move forward. So I'm appreciative of our staff and our teachers who were able to maintain their teaching and move about the business as usual as we experience those different pieces. So it's been a very eventful few weeks, but I don't want to take away from the excitement that is the beginning of the school year and just how great it is to see our children in classes. I've been in all of our buildings, and our kids are having fun, they're learning, and it's just been a real great start. So a lot more to come as next month as we really start to get into the meat of our content. But we're spending a lot of time right now focusing on building relationships with our kids, getting to know our kids, and that work is very, very valuable. So thank you to the board for your support in that endeavor, and to our staff for all the work that they're doing so well. And that concludes my report.
And also to you, Ben, and to your administrative team, who is the glue in all of this. So thank you. Any questions for Ben?
Been helping me way down at the other end of the table. What happened to you? You're supposed to be, I got two wing guys.
You had to say.
Oh, man.
Sorry.
She's down there giving me hand signals. Anyways, I'm glad that you're staying very positive on it. I appreciate that. How did the parents get in the building? Was that a mistake, or was that with the construction going on and all that? Because coming from, and we have several law enforcement people on the board here, we can't have parents walking through hallways disrupting it. I mean, I don't go against that. I mean, they have a right to protest, and I'm not a masker myself, but on the other hand, we have several hundred kids in the school that really are just there to learn.
Yeah.
And that was very disrespectful for those parents to walk through, and of course, my boys are gone now, you know, they're not in the school district anymore, but I asked a lot of parents, and I even asked some of my fellow board members that have kids on here, because I was trying to get a feedback, and some of the kids were really scared and concerned. And that's not fair to the children, and that's our number one goal, is the children, and the second goal is our staff, of course. I don't want to leave you guys out, but you guys feel like I do, I'm sure. You protect the kids first, you'll stand in front of a bullet to protect your children. We cannot have that, and you have to make it clear, and I think, and I can't speak for the rest of the board, but we will not tolerate this. You want to protest? That's great. Do it peacefully. Coming into a public school building and disrupting the learning of the kids, which I know the masks, you can argue about all that other stuff. I don't want to get to that. They are not allowed in there, and that's disruptive, and you need to make that clear. That's all I'm saying. Because whether you're on the right side, the left side, the middle, or the backwards, it doesn't matter. Them kids don't deserve to be disrupted and scared, depending on what grade they are, and who knows what's that going to cost for the district in the future. So please, I respect everybody's right to protest. I'm very outspoken on a lot of items, but you cannot disrupt the interior of that school when our kids are in there. It's dangerous. They may run. You don't know what they're going to do. Lockdown, shelter in place. We have all sorts of rules, and they're going to get confused, and that's disrespectful to our children. I'm telling you that right now. And I'm lucky I wasn't there.
Yeah.
Because I would have escorted them out.
Sure. Yeah. So I appreciate the question and your comments, and I agree 100%.
That's all I'm trying to say. I don't do what you want, but please don't do it in our buildings.
Yeah, I agree 100%, and I think we would be, regardless of the issue, our stance would be the same. But my
yes, I don't care what the issue is.
Sure.
I don't care if the sky's blue or green.
Right.
You cannot go in the building.
Right. So to answer the question, because I think it's a valid and very good question. We are always balancing care for the people that are in our community and the feeling of warmth when they enter our buildings with security.
Yes.
Right. There's a reason why we try to make it very safe. So we have locked doors and we have all these things. But we also don't make people walk through 6 metal detectors and pat downs before
we don't want
the
that
building, right? So it's kind of trying to find a balance. So this particular group was a larger group that entered into the PAC lobby, and normally the door is locked, but the building felt like, hey,
that's my question.
They'd be able to negotiate with them. So they tried to talk to him in the Performing Arts Center, and a large number of those people exited respectfully and said, okay, we're not going to come in.
They did the right thing.
And then several people, unfortunately, pushed through administration, and so then the administration had to make a judgment call and assess the situation. And I'm proud of the way they handled it. I think in hindsight, where there's always things you can learn, because we're far from perfect, right? I mean, these are always complex situations, but certainly those doors are now, going to be locked always, just like our normal entrances are. And so, you take that risk sometimes of trusting parents and families, and unfortunately, this particular time, we needed to do something a little different. But, I can say that everybody was very closely monitored. Our administrators and police walked with the people, and finally, shortly thereafter, they were not in the building for very long. They were escorted out. But, it is unfortunate. But, something we'll learn from and make sure, we avoid any of that in the future.
We don't want Fortress Swartz Creek. We want to be friendly and loving, like you said, and proactive. But I don't want children upset in the building because they don't know. Yeah. Someone may not even know what's going on, and it's just not fair to the kids or our staff, for that matter.
Sure. Then maybe you could talk about. I know that we talked about this in committee, but maybe you could talk about why there was a lockdown called rather than maybe a shelter in place, or what happened with that sort of situation there.
Certainly, yeah. So there's some confusion over shelter in place and lockdown and these types of things. And when we call a shelter in place with our staff, it basically means you may move around the room, but we're asking you not to move around the hallways because we want to the doors stay locked and people don't go on the hallways. the district, or the building felt like they were calling a shelter in place, but what was announced was actually a lockdown, right? And those are two very different things. So there was some confusion on then communicating in kind of the back channel with teachers, hey, it's really a shelter in place, you know, and trying to navigate that. But that can be confusing. And, you know, also, again, things that we're learning from and, you know, trying to remedy. So, but, you know, ultimately, we'll be stronger from it and hopefully, you know, be able to have a more positive, you know, event when that happens again, we'll be better prepared. So, but those are good questions.
Good question.
Anyone
Thank you.
else?
And
No?
thanks for the staff that reacted to that. Was, one other, just a short question. Gary, was there any arrests made? Was somebody out of control, or did the police have to make an arrest?
The police did make one arrest.
Okay,
yes.
all right, so it was, okay. Thank you.
And Chuck, I appreciate your comments, and I think I will speak on behalf of this board. We do look out for the well-being and safety of the staff and the students, and I'm glad that everyone at the end of the day was okay.
Yes.
But it is unfortunate that that occurred. So thanks for sharing all of that, Ben.
Yes.
Appreciate that.
Yep. Hopefully
Great.
we'll get through that, and it'll just be a blip, and like you said, we learned and be very proactive, and
Sure.
Okay, next, let's move on to the Student Board Representative Report. Elena?
You are completely fine. This one's probably gonna be better than last time's anyway. So, this year it just got going, so our students and staff are still trying to find their footing and trying to find the rhythm that works best for them. Last meeting, I did mention hoping to be able to hold monthly meetings where students can come and express any concerns or issues that they may have with our school or with our district. Those will be taking place the second Monday of every month in room 502, I believe. I also recently met with Mr. Micah to discuss the possibility of a full meeting where we ask any and all board members to come and just speak with a small group of students and just really put their minds at ease or answer any questions that they may have. In regards to the mask policy, a great majority of our students understand that even though masks can be inconvenient and uncomfortable, they are necessary, so they are wearing them. So a great deal of them are wearing them correctly. And even those who aren't wearing masks have taken the time to fill out the waiver and are staying a safe distance from others. In regards to the protests, the protesters that I was able to speak with a few of our students, and they were proud to be able to stand up for what they believe in, and they appreciated how the school handled it. They felt safe and felt like they were allowed to do it. And even when a lockdown was called instead of a shelter in place, our support staff and teachers immediately hopped in to just ensure us that everything's fine, there's just a small issue, like just go about your day. In the high school, within the first few days of school, we had a different way of saying our school expectations. This year, instead of having a full school assembly, we actually had videos that were shown every hour with different groups. So our math department took one, our science department took one, etc., to explain different aspects of our school's rules and expectations. And those actually got wonderful feedback because it allowed us to actually have full class discussions and students to ask staff like more precise questions and things, when in a full school assembly, that's not exactly possible. On the first day of school at the middle school, unfortunately, because of the construction, it wasn't available for all sixth graders to come in and really take a tour of the building. So on that first day, the entire day was spent with our web leaders, which are like our link crew members, or just our upperclassmen that just take them around and show them how to open lockers, and they played games with them and just really made them feel comfortable. So that got amazing feedback as well. Next week is our homecoming week. So the homecoming game is on Friday at 7, and the parade is before that. Lineup is at 4 at the middle school. Our athletics are in full swing. Yesterday, our high school volleyball team took on Fenton. I'm not sure how it ended, but I heard that they are very good. No, they are not good. Oh, I'm very sorry.
They are good. It didn't end well yesterday.
Oh, my apologies for that. All right. Today, our golf team is also at Fenton. Tomorrow, our swim, volleyball, and JV football are all taking place at home. And then Friday, we have a golf team at Perry, soccer team is at home, and then our varsity football is at Enton. It's a very full schedule. Like I said, this year is just beginning, so our students and staff are still trying to find their footing and really just find the rhythm that works best for them. Everyone is excited for this school year and the sense of normalcy that comes with that. And I was also asked to share that in addition to any other adjectives that might be used to describe him, Mr. Kitchen is in fact amazing. So, thank you very much.
Did he tell you to say that?
He did, so.
Good job. One question, Carrie. Elena, the schedule that you have when the seniors or the juniors meet, and maybe you'd like some board members there or administrative staff, would you then ask Sue to put that on our calendar for the board members? Because I will never remember it, and it's nice when all that pops up, so if, one of us got a free minute, we could show up and it would keep us reminded of those meetings, okay? So make sure you coordinate with Sue to make sure those meetings are available to us. I know you gave us the dates, but as they go through the month, I think it would help us, okay?
Right now, the date for the meeting that we would like board members to attend, that has not been decided yet.
Okay, well, just make sure you let Sue know so we can get it, okay?
The monthly meetings, however, I'm asking that you guys do not attend.
Okay.
I want to give students a safe space to
Right.
just come and share anything that they might not be fully comfortable sharing if
Right,
you guys were in the room.
right. But it could be good for them too, because, we're not directly supervising them, and we can bring this stuff back to the board to help you guys with some ideas, and you can bring it to us too.
All right,
Great, thank you.
awesome, thank you.
Yep.
Thanks, Elena. Any other questions or comments for Elena?
I just have a comment. Elena echoed it, and I think Ben echoed it, and I just want to, I guess, echo it myself. I want to thank our support staff and our administration for the way they handled the disruption in the high school, and I know that it was a bit of a miscommunication with the call over the PA and all that, but I think our support staff handled it very well and at least tried to mitigate the stress to the students and all that, and I just want to especially thank them for their efforts to make our students feel safe and secure in that situation.
All right, thanks, Jack, and thanks, Elena.
Carrie, can I just have a suggestion? Elena, first of all, thank you. That was an extremely informative and insightful report. We really, really appreciate your efforts and your predecessors. It's such a great advantage to this board to hear the voice of the students. With that being said, I love your idea of having the meetings as well as inviting us to a special meeting to hear that. I have a little suggestion, maybe as you're thinking of some logistics, even if it's an email link or as old school as a suggestion box, but if there's like a, ask a board member or, ask a teacher or something like that that would be anonymous. And I hate to put the pressure to you, but if you would kind of filter those, and though some of us may not be as openly available to attend those meetings, but we would love to get that feedback and can possibly email a response, or we can take it to our committee meetings to have a collective response or anything of that sort. So I love your initiatives and maybe, any way that we can get the voice of the students at every level as well.
Thank you, I'll definitely get started on that.
Thanks,
Thank
Lisa.
you.
Great idea. Thank you. And we look forward to that meeting, Elena. Hopefully, you'll have several of us there. Appreciate it. Okay. All right, now moving on to our board subcommittee reports. I'm going to start with Brian with policy.
Policy meeting. We had that meeting yesterday, September 14th, Tuesday. In attendance was Superintendent Micah, Mr. Heatherton, Mr. Main, Brian Spanik, Alyssa Parks, Jessica Lonay, John Sayer, and Alicia Gardner. We called the order at 0600. The first item on the agenda was we reviewed and discussed policy number 3408, which was a troublesome policy going through. we just, within the last 6 months, we've changed policy. We've renewed and refreshed all of our policies. So we read it, discussed it, reviewed it. We're satisfied with the language. There was no change. The next item was we reviewed for the rest of the time there at the policy meeting. We reviewed and discussed the policy. In response to the recent situation from Friday, we debriefed and talked what happened, what could have been done differently or better, and it was kind of a debriefing. And then we were going to carry that same conversation over to the superintendent notes, which we just completed. The next item, there was public comment, there was none, and we were adjourned at 7:19 a.m.
Any questions for Brian?
Thank you.
Thank you, Brian. All right, I'm going to move to academic achievement. We also met yesterday, and I think I have the wrong date on this report. It says 7:20, it should be 7:14.
9:14.
9:14, thank you. Ugh. That gives you a picture of my day. So Rod was very generous in reporting to us the beginning of the year kickoff. He talked about the support staff PD or professional development, and it was very well received by the staff. And correct me if I'm wrong, Rod or Ben, but Swartz Creek is somewhat unique in that it offers our support staff professional development similar to what we do with our certified educators, correct? So I give you kudos for that. Rod talked about some of the topics that were covered, the absence management system, which is called Red Rover. There was a presentation by Michelle Culver and Ashley Heatherton on trauma and mindfulness, including the trauma-informed care efforts. And Stan Page from the high school presented on diversity, equity, and inclusion, which is a very important topic near to dear to this board. Kevin Claren also talked about ALICE training, which is very timely given what transpired last week. It's training for staff, both certified staff and support staff, that is intended to address any kind of emergency response, especially in the case of an active shooter or intruder. Rod also talked about the new Dragon PD or professional development. This is focused on the new teachers in the district after the last few meetings where we've hired many teachers, and that's wonderful. They talked about the MTSS and the journey that the district has come from My Blissey and RTI, which seems like a long time ago, Rod. We've talked about how great you guys have been and how progressive you've been. Standards-based grading also was shared with the team, and then gave an overview of all the great work that folks like Michelle Bealby have done on the STEM program, which is now our STEAM program, and looking at the curriculum and all of the infrastructure changes, including the building additions that have taken place. And then they brought folks up to speed with the other educators in the district about the 5 dimensions of teaching and learning, the instructional framework that we use. Travis provided a technology overview and training with all the logins for our systems and tools that we use. And then also, Rod talked about the teacher professional development, which was held prior to the start of school. There's been a focus, I think, as Ben mentioned, with relationship building and really focusing on that initially and improving the culture, as opposed to just focusing on the curriculum and children's academic achievement. Again, they talked about the 5D framework, and it sounds like they're starting to progress towards purpose, which is great to hear. And then Jody Morgan and Katie Preer gave presentations on P4 targets and P5 success criteria. I think what was really exciting to learn is that the Schoology learning management system that we now are using can integrate with the Power School program that we have, and Kickboard, which I'm anxious to learn a lot more about, but it makes us a very integrated user of all those tools and should be more efficient for the end users. So we look forward to hear how that's going. Buildings always break out for professional development, and there was some focus on trauma and self-care and student support. And finally, and I'm not going to spend any time on this, but Rod and the summer school leaders are here this evening to give us a really great presentation. We look forward to that. And there was no public comment. That was it. Any questions? Sure.
How are we looking on teacher staff? I know we're gonna hire some today, but if it's our staffing level, this might be best directed to them. Are we doing okay? Are we low, high? Oh, all right, thanks.
So the question about how we sit on staffing.
Yes.
And I think we're sitting very, very well. We're reporting the investment, I think, in the teachers that we've made have brought class size down to levels that are the lowest since I've been here, which has always been a target, so that's really great. We certainly hope to see that trend be able to stabilize, and so we've kind of made that investment. So we're doing really well. We had a large number of teachers wanting to come here. Very excited about tonight because you'll get a chance to meet 2 additions to the team. But it's gone very well. Where we continue to struggle is staffing some of our support positions, right? Some of our hourly positions, some of our more technical positions like social workers. Those are very challenging to come by. So we're constantly recruiting and looking to try and fill them.
But academically, we're doing good.
Yes.
Okay, great. That's good.
Thanks, Chuck.
Thank you, Carrie.
Oh, sure. All right, so now let's move on to finance. Jessica?
The Finance Committee met September 13th. We called to order at 2:17. We reviewed the cash and investment summary with no issues. We are anticipating that the 2021 general fund balance will finish with approximately at 16.8%. We reviewed the check register and with no issues. In discussing bids and quotes, we have an active RFP. On Monday, it was for 250 steel shelf units for the middle school, and now, though, because of an issue that the unit that we thought we might get is unavailable, that is going to be 282 units, and those bids are due and will be opened on September 23rd, and we expect the board to be able to vote for approval at our October meeting. A bid also went out for landscaping for the administration building, and that went to the lowest bidder for $14,300, and a PO was issued to Chippewa Asphalt for seal coating the parking lot at Elms. We discussed the Esser 2 update for the funds. Funds have already been used for the summer school and HVAC units and components for the middle school. We're discussing requesting the remaining allocation for those funds be used for HVAC units at the high school and additionally at the middle school, approximately 456 units between the schools. And we are still putting together ideas about the ESSER 3 funding. As far as food service that we discussed next was information was provided and we briefly discussed. We had an information letter from the CEO of Food Buy that our company Chartwell purchases food through Food Buy anyways. And the Michigan Department of Education, both in regards to anticipation of supply shortages and the effects that will have for reimbursable meals for districts. At some point, this may affect us, but it is not presently doing that. We had no public comment. We had no other committee comments, and we will meet again October 11th at 2 p.m.
Thanks, Jessica. Any questions for Jessica?
Just one. Who's gonna go up though?
We anticipate, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, food prices.
So we have to be careful on that
Yes.
budget item. Okay.
Yes.
Thanks, Chuck. All right, let's move on to building and site. Chuck?
Yeah, we had a lot to go over, and some of it Jessica went over because it had to do with money. We met on 9/13/2021, 3:14 p.m. The meeting ended at 4:43 p.m. It was held here at the administration building. It was open to the public. Meeting was called to order by myself. Present was Chris Gray, Jessica Levine, Brian, Ben, Rod, Travis, our technology director, Adrian, our athletic director, and Johnny Cooper, who was a guest speaker. First order of business was, and I brought this up 2 meetings ago. I keep thinking I was here last month. I apologize. It was from Johnny Cooper. He gave a presentation on safety equipment to help stop the spread of COVID. Numerous items are available for schools and sporting events. The committee had good interaction with some possible solutions to implement in the near future for the district to keep our students and staff safer. This is just one tool that can help and works in conjunction with other mitigation policies or rules established by county, state, or federal mandates. The committee asked Ben to look into it and come up with options to the board as a whole. Also, this equipment can be utilized throughout the district for dances, sporting events, staff meetings, anywhere that we congregate large numbers of persons coming onto school properties. Anticipate that these costs can be deferred by federal grants. And I think that the committee's impression was that we would go with some type of stanchion with maybe just the thermometer and a picture of the student with a green or red light. But it's, you know, we want the whole board to discuss this soon so we can get this implemented. And I know I brought it up, what month was it? Help me out, August?
Yeah, probably before that.
Yeah, July, yeah. So, and I mean, the costs range from $3,000-$4,000 all the way up to $24,000. Is there any comments on that?
I just would add that I think that's a great level of protection. I mean, one of the things we know is that fever, you know, students with a fever, you know, even absent COVID, we don't want people that have, you know, that are contagious in the building. So if we can use a technology that would be safe and allow us to do that, I think it's a great idea. So I'm excited to explore that more.
Okay, good. Any other questions from board members? Okay, completed
I'm sorry.
projects. I'm sorry, go ahead, Alicia, go ahead. You got the medical field.
No, I had a question if we know of available federal grants or we're just hoping that there's federal grants available.
Well, go ahead, Ben.
Yeah, so actually this would fall right in line with our Esser 3 funds that we could allocate towards this. And so it would be, you know, something that would be hardware that would essentially allow, if it could be fast enough to be efficient, right? That's the question operationally is, can you do it where you're getting people through? I think if you get enough of them, it could be, and that would basically say, you know, hey, whether it's a homecoming dance or a prom or a sporting event or even during the school day, there's a visitor that's coming, hey, we're asking that you not enter the building if your temperature is over, you know, 101 degrees or something like that, where you're putting other people potentially at risk of exposure. So, and it's a perfect allowable use for those Esser funds.
Yeah, and I might add, some people were concerned that it could be put online or out on the internet. This is, and Travis assured us, and so did the person that gave the presentation, this is all done in-house. It stays in, the pictures don't go anywhere. We already have pictures of the kids anyways.
Right.
But it just shows a picture of them, temperature, green light, red light, but we would have to buy just not one unit, there'd have to be multiple units. But we could bring the cost down without having, you know, all this stuff. And I know I brought it up a couple months ago, I'm not saying this is gonna mitigate anything, but it just gives us a layer of protection. If we get rid of these, I don't want somebody sitting next to another kid with 102 temperature, I think. Yeah, go ahead.
I mean, I'd like to see a lot more. I'm curious about total cost, because there are a lot of other options for those funds. Also, their assets, so asset depreciation, and how long do they last? Like, how often do you have to replace them? You don't have to answer those
Right.
now. I'm just kind of curious about
No,
those.
that's great questions. We asked him all that at the committee. He said these can be upgraded. They last indefinitely. It's just like basically a tablet. It's kind of like you see at the restaurants. Has anybody been to a restaurant where you go in and they snap it shows a picture of yourself and you can hold your wrist to it instead of your head and it gives a quick temperature thing. This is not a catch-all for the school. It's just one layer of security for us. And I don't think the school could afford this, but with the Esser funds and federal grants, we have almost $4 million coming. This is a drop in a bucket if we spend $30,000 to $60,000 of money that they're giving to us, and I think it's money well spent. And I'm open to any ideas for the building committee, but this is just one layer of security, but great.
Interested in more information.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree.
In fact, we have it. We can give it to you. We have the packets here. So I think Stu can make copies of them and get them to you through Ben.
Is there anything in looking at that too, Chuck, that you can ask potential integration with the new security system that will be installed once we get
I'll
to
let
it?
Ben answer that, but he did answer it, and Jessica was Brian with the RFDs and the tags. All that can be integrated and upgraded. I was just concerned that the price was kind of high for the top-of-the-line system, and I don't know if we need all
Yeah,
that.
that's per system?
Yeah.
Ooh.
Yeah. But it can be easily upgraded, even with metal detectors in the future, if we have to ever do that, which I hope we don't. Go ahead, Ben.
Yeah, I just was, the price range goes, the big unit is a whole booth system, where the committees felt like maybe even just a single stanchion with the device, maybe you have hand sanitizer and those types of things, but, you know, you don't necessarily need to invest in the full Cadillac, if you will, to make it valuable.
I'm good with the cruise.
Yeah. Next thing was completed projects. The Gaines air conditioning was successfully installed before the start of school and was fully operational. Gymnasium lighting has been installed and working properly with better lighting for the students and staff. I just didn't put in there, what gym was that for?
That was for the high school and middle school.
High school, middle school, and we plan on doing this to all the schools eventually. Yep. And the playground mulch was installed. That was completed projects. We talked about that, I think, a month and a half, 2 months ago. The vinyl fence at the admin building, we'll be seeking bids on that. We finally got a good survey. We requested that at the building department. We wanted all of our property surveyed because it hasn't been done in years, and we can have a master copy of all our surveys. The good news is that all the fences belong to the school and are on school property. So anything that's contiguous to the admin building or our properties, we're not going to interfere with anybody's property or fences, so we don't get in trouble there. Elms Road seal coating, Jessica went over that. The parking lot was repaved, although not the entire parking lot. The part that was not repaved, they seal coated for approximate price of $7,400. Siren walk-in cooler, I added this on. It's still not in. We anticipate it's going to be in soon, according to Chris, but everything's ready to go. October. Yep. October. It was supposed to be installed this month, but right. And the admin building landscaping, we talked about that. There was a sealed bid for that, although it didn't meet the threshold of our $24,000 thing. But 2 bidders put in for it. T's got it at $13,400. He's going to do the bid according to the CAD drawing and the architectural drawings. Is that true, Ben? Because we have
Yes, from agroscaping.
Yep. Mary Crapo update. Okay. Communities First had not obtained their grant approval. Again, so we're 4 years into this now, and the committee suggests that we go and get bids for usage for this property, meaning, you know, what it would cost to possibly take it down, asbestos abatement. Nobody wants to take the building down, but it's a $2 million project to refurbish it. And so there's this talk that we start moving. I suggested this several months ago. I think most of the board was kind of in agreement with that we start doing something instead of waiting for first community to keep hamstringing us along and the building's deteriorating further, and then we're kind of stuck with, you know, an eyesore in the middle of the city. And, you know, my idea was to put in a ball field there and call it the Mary Crapo Ball Field, you know, that in honor of the school building itself and maybe a dedication and stuff. But it's up to the board, but we need to really move on this soon. And we're already they've only got 3 months left, and they just missed their last bid. Ben has more information on that. So Ben, any discussion?
Yeah, so they were not successful. There is a second, like a final shot, I guess, in October. But what we'll know is, and so what we talked about was finding out what option B would be, you know, and to kind of look in alternate plans. But certainly, I think there'll be a lot of opportunity to share some ideas about that in the near future. You know, we'll know for sure in October. So we originally were talking February. But realistically, if they don't meet the funding round in October, I think we need to be ready to kind of move quickly. And so I'll have more, and certainly Chuck and I have talked, and we'll have more to share about a building in sight at next month's meeting, you know, in terms of what the latest and greatest status is of that.
And I can't speak for Brian and Jessica, but we all kind of not agreed 100%, but we need to move forward and do something instead of just waiting. And like I said, the one suggestion I had was a football, or not a football field, the football fans out there, baseball, maybe a baseball field, walking path, things for the community so that the entire Swartz Creek community can enjoy and be a jewel in the middle of town. There's something that's, you know, aesthetically pretty, it looks good, the district can use it, maybe the city could use it, maybe even pitch in, and it'd be good for the community. But at the end of the day, we have to make the decision with that property. And then the last thing was, this is old news, facility usage cage. Adrian, our athletic director, brought in 2 proposals from groups that would like to lease the building for sporting events and usage such as practicing for basketball. The committee asked about the shorter contracts. Jessica asked maybe we could do a shorter contract as a trial thing. Brian said the same thing. We were kind of in agreement of that we're not really against leasing it. It's just we want to make sure we can get the right amount of money for the usage of our property, and that these groups will treat our property respectfully and not tear it up or, you know, do damage to it. And the money that they give us is really not an offset for the usage of the property. This is going to be a full board discussion. I know we've done this before several times, but it's something that we're going to have to discuss soon. And I do have one of the packets. I didn't make copies, but I do, and all the board members were given it at the committee, was the optional prices. I don't know if that's in the packet or not, if Sue included it or not. But I have a copy of it here so you guys can review it. And we're gonna ask Adrian to do a little bit more research and get back with them, but something needs to be done and maybe be brought back to the next board with a little bit more information so everybody on the board can make a decision on what they would like to do with the cage, if they would like to lease it or not. That's it. Our next meeting is, I believe, on October the 11th, and we adjourned at 4:43 PM. It was a long meeting.
Thanks, Chuck. Any questions for Chuck?
I just have a couple. Chuck?
I'm sorry.
Sorry, I had a couple questions.
John was bugging me over here. I'm sorry. Blame it on John. He was playing with the mic.
I just want to clarify,
Yeah.
so, next round for Communities First is October, but that contract runs till February.
It does, and that's a great question, because we had a split vote on the board on that back in, I believe it was November of last year or October, and everybody had mixed feelings about it, and I spoke my feelings then. I didn't want to go into it, but that's okay. We did it as a board, and we all agreed on it, and it was very good. But you know what? I need to see that contract again, Alicia, because I don't have it to read the fine print. Maybe Ben can provide that before we have the building and committee meeting, and maybe provide it to all the board members so we can all review it, have legal counsel review it, and see what we could do with it. Because I really have a feeling we just need to move, and if I could break it, we just do it now and get it over with and use it for ourselves. Yes.
So
Good question.
the option actually goes through February.
Right.
But the latest, kind of the last funding round would be, they missed this last one, and so October would be the kind of final. So basically what I'm saying is, yes, the option goes through February, but if they don't have funding, obviously they can't do the project.
Right.
So
And is there any, do we get anything out of that if they don't, or it's literally just they're out and now we're still stuck with it? Okay.
I think, can I add, Ben? I think what we mean is, and that refreshed my memory, the application process was to October. So when you put in for the grant, you have to this deadline to do it, and then the grantor reviews it and then either approves it or not. But if they didn't put it in time October, they're out in February, so we're just sitting on a mute contract. That's why I said we need to read it and either break it or move on to the school district.
And then I guess it's a question if we can, but a question to consider too, if we're able to. I think this will be a large discussion, a specialty project type of thing if we have to move forward with this, and it sounds like we really need to. Can we do a subcommittee of sorts, or a specialized committee just for this? It's going to be pretty intensive. I think that needs to be almost a separate, almost like we did for the bond, but separate from building and site. Even not that building and site obviously isn't overseeing that, but so that we can get public feedback, city feedback, whatever we need to do to move forward, but to start being a little proactively prepared.
yeah, I mean, I'm happy to facilitate, however you guys want to do that, and, take kind of your lead and how you want to do it. And anybody that's interested in being on it would be great.
And then I just had comments only, Chuck, to the cage discussion. Definitely think we need to consider any rental or leasing to be secondary to all Swartz Creek teams and programming. With that being said, I feel like, I know you mentioned having shorter contracts. We really have seasonal, sporting events of our own. So it's kind of difficult if we agree to something and then we roll from fall sports to winter sports, and now all of a sudden we've got a winter sports team that needs it. Almost think that might need to be a consideration, is to almost make them seasonally so that our teams and our programming have first dibs. It's our property, and should be our priority, and then secondary to outside organizations. Although that may bring in funding, that's not our first priority, is my opinion. That's it.
I think, agreed. At the building committee, I think Brian, Jessica, and me all echoed that, but we wanted to keep an open ear to these groups, and Adrian was very persuasive that she would like to see this, and there she is, she's back there, and she'll verify this, but we were actually kind of against it as a rule of thumb, and I led this several months ago because I don't like people renting our property, tearing it up, and then giving it back to us. But she brought up some very valid points, so that's why the committee said we would at least look at it, entertain some other possible, I don't know what the right word is.
Options?
Options, yeah. Options that could help us, but at the end of the day, I mean, my idea is to buy the 3 acres next door, put a lacrosse field and a soccer field, and turn it into the Super Swartz Creek Center for us. But, and they can call for that too, it's just where we come up with the money. And Brian and me, we're gonna work on that personally to try to make that happen with some of the people that own property there. But at the end of the day, I think in fairness, we need to look at people that do bring us offers, and as a board, then make a decision, which I think I've already tipped my hand on how I feel about, sorry, Adrian. But it's open. We should be open to it because it could bring business into the community as a whole.
So, and just to clarify on that question, we currently have facility fees that when we open our facilities, which currently because of COVID, we've been kind of closed down. But when we open them, you know, we have rental schedules for the case. So right now, there could be a group that says, I'd like to rent it for a weekend. You know, certainly goes through Adrian's office. If it's available, we could do that. What we're really talking about is something more long-term, you know, like is the board wanting to entertain a lease that's longer than that? And that's a discussion that I agree, you know, would have to come later. But just to be fully transparent, right? There are facilities in our district that are always open for rental unless the board decides to change that policy. But what we're really talking about is more longer term, you know, even, you know, 6 months, 4 months, 8 months, 12 months, you know, rentals or a more of a long-term lease that's locked in. That's where you guys are going to have to decide, you know, if you do or don't want to approve that. Thanks,
Brian. All right, I have a question that was brought to my attention, Chuck. And it may be Chuck and Jessica. On the landscaping, one of our reports says 13,400 and one says 14,300. I think one of them is probably a transposition, so I just want to make sure we have the right information.
Yeah, it's 14,300.
Okay, great,
Yep.
great.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Oh, no. Hey, I had the wrong date on my report, you know, so. No worries, Chuck, I just want to make sure.
It takes me a long time to type these 2 pages.
You did very well, thank you. Lots of information. So thank you. All right, moving on, I think we have reached that exciting point in our agenda. We get to hear from some of our teams who led the summer school program.
Yes, I'll turn it over to Mr. Heatherton.
Thank you. I'm excited to introduce our team. We have Nate Gatlin, who was our summer school coordinator for the whole district. Katie Prier ran the 6-8 building. Michelle Bealby ran the 3-5 building. And Becky Trent and Amy Bremer, Amy Jackson, however you want me to say that, ran the K2 building. And they are here to talk about, we've been talking about summer school every meeting since we started and even before we started. And I think, you know, because of the Esser money and how big that the program was able to get, I calculated out we averaged about 5 times more students than what we normally do and spent 7 or 8 times more money than what we usually do. I don't really want to get into those specifics because I know a lot of those slides are in there. So I'm just going to turn it over to them and let them tell you about their experiences this summer. So team, come on up.
Good evening. You guys can come up when we planned. Thank you, first of all, for allowing us to fulfill the role of coordinators in the summer school program. It was really impactful for the students, most importantly, but for ourselves and the staff. And it will become obvious when you see some of the pictures that show up and hear the site managers talk about what was happening during these weeks and 6 weeks of summer camp. Travis, if you could go to the next one. Some of the highlights, this was the biggest summer program. As you guys are well aware, you've probably been talking about this, like Rod said. The biggest program registration-wise, definitely, and then also in attendance. We had 440 students registered across 3 levels. This took place at 3 of our buildings. So we had our K2 group at Moorish, and as Rod mentioned, we had Becky Trent and Amy Brimmer that led that group. We had 125 students in our 3 to 5 level, which took place at Deke, and Michelle Bealby was in charge of that site. 75 students registered for Elms, 6th to 8th grade. Katie Preer stepped in and took care of us there and led that site. There was awesome teamwork and collaboration. Again, you'll see that in some of the pictures and hear about it when they share. STEM-based themes for every week. Got the kids excited, got them moving, got them doing things. Transportation, food services, childcare. For transportation and childcare, it was the first time ever providing those things for summer camp. And we all owe a huge, especially me, owe a huge thanks to Mary Penrod and RC with transportation. What they do is awesome. And I know it was only a small scale for them of what they're used to, but it was still impressive to see them work and organize that. Food services, same thing. Susie Waddell was really helpful. Tony Delgado as well. You can go to the next slide too, Travis. Thank you. So we had 243 students ride the bus during summer school. The first day, that made for a very nerve-wracking experience at Moorish, as we wanted to make sure everything went smoothly, and I would say for the most part it did. It raised our blood pressure a little bit that day, but meals, we served, actually that was 7 bus routes, I skipped that part. Meals, Tony and Susie helped us organize to serve 4,732 breakfasts and 7,205 lunches. And then May Bendel was huge with the before and after care organization. We had 34 students that took part in before and after care at Moorish. So I would like my team to be able to tell you a little bit more about their sites, and so I'm going to ask Becky and Amy to come on up and tell you about the K2 group.
Good evening. My name is Amy Brimmer, and I was the co-coordinator with Becky Trent in the K2 building. And as Nate shared, we had a pretty large group of kids at Moorish. We also had 12 teachers and 13 parapros that supported those kids. We were the building hub where all the kids came to and transported to the other buildings, and we also housed the before and after care. So there was a lot going on in those mornings and afternoons when we were getting them in and out of the building. But what we're most excited about is that these young learners were able to have 6 more weeks of reading, writing, and math, all focused around STEM topics. So I'm going to share with you the first 3 weeks of our STEM topics. So in week 1, we focused on the states of matter, and we really tried to pull the kids in and make them want to come back more, so we did that with ice cream. They made their own homemade ice cream, their own homemade popsicles. They looked at the states of matter and root beer floats. So we were hoping that that would just draw them in and want them to come back. The second week of camp, they focused on engineering. They built bridges. The bridges were made out of paper, popsicle sticks, straws, and Legos. Some made them out of pretzels and marshmallows. They made these varieties of bridges, They tested hypotheses of what would make them stronger, and then they measured the amount of weight that each of them would hold. The third week was flight, and the students worked on designing planes and measuring how far they would fly. The second day, they built a plane out of a different type of material to compare their flight distance for each kinds of material. The third day, they made gliders, and they tested those. And then the final day, they made parachutes, and they had a lot of fun climbing up on the playground equipment and watching them sail off and fly down to the ground. And then Becky's going to share the rest of it.
Good evening. The following week, we captured our students' excitement with robots. The students were very engaged with exploring and learning how to code the different robots that we have in our buildings in the district. Our last 2 weeks were reserved for some data collection and learning about animals and their habitats. With the gracious funding that we received this year, we were even able to bring an in-house field trip to our students, and which was Science Alive. And that was a really big deal because, as we spoke about earlier, some of our students have never experienced a field trip in their school career so far. So it was a really exciting time for them. We wrapped things up with a Field and Water Day and took the time to celebrate all of the relationships and learning that we had accomplished over the 6 weeks. And I believe that it was a great transition for a lot of our students that had been online and making that transition back into the building.
I think we counted 42
We
that
did.
had not been in, that were online students that actually came to summer school. And so that was a good transition.
Yeah. Yes, thank you.
I don't know, there were some pictures going, I don't know if you guys want to, I don't know, Travis, if those can go back and look at those K-1-2 ones, anything you guys want to highlight?
Yeah, so you can see that was a big hit right there. This was when Science Alive was with us, and that speaks for itself. But correct. Right. And you can see here, this is some of the robots that the students were able to work with. Some of the different, this is moving into flight, and you can see some of the things that Amy was talking about, from the parachutes to the different materials that they use to construct their airplanes. And this was the engineering week, which was extremely fun for kids, building, whether it was Legos or popsicle sticks, and testing out the different weight, that would, the weight that would hold on these materials. The kids did a phenomenal job building. Went way above what we expected or even would have thought ourselves.
I think what's more impressive than what they built is the huge smiles on all their faces.
100%, yes. That,
Yes.
yeah.
Being normal kids, having fun at school.
Yes.
And
We-
learning at the same time.
Yeah.
Absolutely. We had a parent come into the office one day, and her child had an appointment, and she thought, that they would just go home after the appointment, but her student refused her to go home. He had to get to summer school afterwards. So that right there, that made our day. That was worth the whole 6 weeks right there. Thanks, Michelle.
Good evening. I'm Michelle Bilby. I was the site manager for the 3-5 summer camp. First of all, thank you for allowing me to participate and work with some fabulous educators. This was a really strong team. Having been in this program now for 5 years, we started out the camp concept in order to entice students who didn't enjoy a regular classroom setting or struggled in that setting to find joy in learning again. And we have rolled with the punches through the years, and we've grown, and this year has turned out to be a really strong year for us. I've seen a lot of growth, not only in our just STEM program, but the academics. We grew those tremendously this year. At the 3-5 level, we explored a lot of the same topics. Our first week was ice cream. If you saw TV 12 News, you saw some of our students. It wasn't just about making the ice cream, it was about exploring the chemistry behind it. We did taste comparisons to various brands. We looked at costs of those brands, the nourishment in those brands. Our students then went into the making of the ice cream, which is also a chemistry activity. And they did melt rate packaging. So they explored the melt rate of an ice cube and how to reduce that through packaging concepts. And they looked at transportation. Our second week was animals, and each student was given a little plastic animal, and their responsibility was to do full research on that animal. They then developed a slide presentation, and they used the information that they gleaned in their research to build a diorama, and then at the end of the week, they had to give a verbal presentation to their peers using their slide presentation and their diorama about their animal. So we're building those public speaking skills, so they're not as nervous as we are. Our third week, we did engineering, And our big part with engineering is using different manipulatives so that students can understand what sound structure is, what shapes are involved, and how to do that. It wasn't just a free build all the time. A lot of times teachers would give them constraints, and the students' job was to meet those constraints in their construction. Our fourth week was robotics. We had the advantage at D to use not only the mini spheros, the bolts you see on the screen now. The students used Edisons that allow us to incorporate the Legos. We had a group of young men that kind of went a little rogue and developed their own sumo wrestling contest out of this, set up their own rules, built their own mats, took that to a whole new level. And we also used drones this year. So our fifth graders were actually programming with drones, and were able to use measurement to make those drones meet certain flight constraints. And then our last week was flight. And we used different types of rockets and, believe it or not, paper airplanes. And they explored distance, the various variables in there of weight, the fin design, the type of rocket they were building, and how much kinetic energy and potential energy was involved in order to get a specific distance. All of these things that I'm talking about required a tremendous amount of reading and mathematics. So it's not just about the fun activities you're hearing about, but there's a tremendous amount of research and a tremendous amount of math involved. I had an opportunity to step over to Elms on a couple of days, and in doing so, I was able to talk to some of the teachers there. This program has great potential for our students. We know that there's benefit for those, but we're also giving a lot of benefit to our staff. What we're allowing them to do is to experience in a setting where they're not being judged what an applied learning concept looks like. This year I had teachers coming to me saying, I've never experienced this before, but now I understand, and I'm planning to take this back into my classroom this year. Or, can you come meet? I want to know how to make this work in my topic because I'm not science. So we're not just educating our students, we're educating our staff. Thank you.
Michelle, I don't know if you want to highlight any of the pictures too.
Let's see. Math lessons. So you can see how intense these kids are. Math isn't always just about a worksheet and a calculation. So they're actually doing calculations to color this picture. So they're having to do several calculations in order to do that. So you can see the intensity in the classroom. This was the ice melt lab, so they had a lot of different just consumables. Basically, you'd call it junk. They were each given the objective of designing a package to reduce the rate of a melt of an ice cube over their lunch break. So they built all morning, they each got an ice cube, and then when they came back from lunch, they got to open them up and see who still had an ice cube. The young man on the right had a full ice cube when he returned. So some were very successful, and some had tears as big as the ice cube. Research here, they're researching on their animals. You can see little plastic animals sitting on the tables. They're researching their animals. They're gaining all the information they need in order to develop their slide presentations and their dioramas. Doing some reading research here. You can see buddy reading going on, independent reading going on. One thing we were able to do this year with the grant money was provide a tremendous amount of literature for the kids. So I'm very happy to say that our students went home. They took home actual books for the first time ever. Now what you see them reading from here isn't actual books, but they got an opportunity to meet in small groups with an educator, whether it was a parapro or with a teacher. And now they were able to meet their needs at their grade or at their level. So if you were a tier 3 student, you got that independent opportunity to read a book that was at your level. And then when you were done, you took it home. So now they have something they are successful at that they can take home and share with their family. So again, this is preparing their slides for their presentations. Some of the dioramas, their favorite part. And here you can see they're working.
Reading skills.
Reading skills, yeah, it's all about the reading. Problem solving, a lot of collaboration, a lot of new friends were made this summer. Kids from various buildings were able to get together, and a lot of new friends were made. Again, different ways of doing math, tremendous amount of concentration. We're pinball machines, but it's not just pinball machines, it's potential and kinetic energy, creating sound energy. And they actually got into light circuits using a little LED. Collaboration just not amongst the kids, staff in collaborating in the afternoon after all the students have left. Sometimes I had to run them out of the building. And this was drone flight, so you can see they have a flight area in front of them. I'm explaining to them in this slide what their objective is. They have some mathematical calculations they have to provide before they're allowed to even write their program. Once their program is written, then they can come up and test flight a drone to see if their design has worked. And you can see here all the measuring involved. Some of the kids did independently and others chose to work as teams. We had one of our classes got an opportunity to Zoom with an actual engineer for about an hour. He answered all their questions. That was pretty fabulous. I got to step in. Everything from do you have a cat to how do you solve this problem on this car? So in summer camp, it wasn't required.
Health department didn't.
And the health department did not require it for summer
Michelle, you
camp.
did a great job.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Yeah, you did a great job. You didn't teach them math, you taught them physics if you're talking about kinetic energy. So you went over and above.
Fourth grade science.
Yes,
Fourth grade.
you did great, thank you. Yep. Thank you, Sherry.
All right, my turn. So, as you know, my day job as principal of Deacon Gaines Elementary. Over the summer, Natalie Cooper was the 6-8 site coordinator, and she was offered and accepted another job in a different district as an administrator. So I was asked to step into this incredible opportunity for our students this summer and lead the 6-8 summer camp at Elms. It was very cool because in my district role, I was able to work with all of our buildings, so it was nice to come back and meet some of our high school and middle school teachers. I had 2 from the middle school and 2 from the high school, and we had several phenomenal support staff members as well. Our day was set up with reading, math, and science. The teachers explored topics such as kitchen chemistry, space, solar energy, and we did 2 weeks of rugby robotics. We served all tiers of students, tier 1, tier 2, and tier 3. An interesting dynamic for our building is we served students who were out as virtual students who came back in as a transition from summer school to go back to middle school full-time. So we had a good, dozen kiddos where that was the case for them, where they were out virtually, and this was their bridge to come back into school full-time. And so that was a really cool opportunity for them. It's, as you just heard me say, kiddos, it's my pleasure to work with the 6th through 8 students. I haven't done that in a couple of years. And as I was greeting them in the morning, I would say, "Good morning, children." And they would respond, "We are not children." And I was like, absolutely, I'm back working with young adults. I need to change my mindset here. A huge impact for our entire program that I want to make mention to the board is we were able to solidify and secure 6 social workers who were phenomenal, and we had 2 at each site. So one of the things that was a huge impact for the 6-8 program was able to provide social emotional learning for our kids at that age. They had 2 SEL lessons a week. They focused on self-esteem, they focused on problem-solving strategies, they focused on team building, and they were also provided some individual support too with things that they were working on with anything that you name. We were able to support them on. So I think that was a huge impact across the board for all of our buildings to be able to secure that for summer camp. The last thing that they ended summer camp with was social emotional learning, was a building scavenger hunt, which was fantastic. Nate, I didn't see that our cornhole or kickball tournament pictures made the slides. What happened there? I know, I was right, fantastic. And then lastly, we were able to get some feedback from the students at the 6-8 level, and we've had some discussion on that, and so it's pausing us to reflect. We had a lot of students at the tier 1 level that even though they were 6th through 8th grade, they were performing kind of at like 9-12 area reading and math. And so they were looking for some more enrichment. And so it's causing us to reflect on how do we meet the needs of the kids who are coming to us looking for enrichment that are at that high level. What do we do for those kids who want to extend their learning, who are looking into maybe going into some of those GCI programs, some of those skilled trade programs, and that's what they were looking for. We also had the fine arts end as well. We had a lot of students request, do we have opportunities for more band lessons or for more music lessons or for more art lessons? So it was very fascinating to get the feedback from the students on what they wanted their summer camp experience to look like. So the teachers also reflected that it was fantastic. Our high school teachers, it gave them a refreshing, we had a senior high school teacher, a 12th grade teacher, Mrs. Anthony, who was actually teaching 6th grade. And so that was a huge stand. And she was amazing and glowing at the end of the 6 weeks. She just couldn't believe how wonderful it was to be working with those young people. And it just said that she was ready for a renewed classroom experience from doing that. So all in all, I was very blessed to come in and step in, and I had a great team behind me as I was trying to do multiple roles. But I can't say enough for the 6-8 program and what those people did with those young learners. And I think that was the highest attendance we had, was 75 students. So I'm looking forward to see that grow next summer for sure. I had 4 that I had assigned to me, yes. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I had 4, and then I believe I had 6, 7 support staff. We had a science guy, you saw him in there, his name was Nate as well. He was a fantastic STEM coordinator, that's what he did. He was able to lead some fantastic science lessons. I think it was a great experience for our middle school and high school teachers to step out of their content area, because at those levels they're very content driven, and here they had to be a master of all subjects, so they kind of lived the life that our K-5 teachers live, having to teach all 5 content areas, or 5 preps as we call it. And so when you had a English teacher needing to teach math and science and vice versa, we had a strong science content teacher that needed to teach ELA and math. They had to step outside their comfort zone. And it was very cool to just coach them through that and give them that confidence that you can do all things. And I think they really enjoyed that.
That's great. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Since Katie mentioned the staff and student kind of relationship piece, I wanted to kind of throw in one that I observed at Elms. Cindy Warber was one of our Elms 6th through 8th grade teachers, even though she's normally a high school teacher. And the neat thing that I witnessed with her was her group, she started referencing them as freshmen because they were going to transition and become that very soon. And so she was able to, at the tail end, show them some things with Schoology with Travis's help. Travis doesn't get mentioned when things are going right, so I want to make sure I give him credit for all the prep that his team helped us do too. We had Chromebooks for every student in the program. But back to Cindy and what she was able to do, she was able to create a comfort level with students, build a relationship, and now they have a familiar face to see at the high school. Lori, Anthony, even though she had 6th graders, she was able to do that with some of our middle school group as well. And then of course the 2 middle school teachers that are normally with us at the middle school, I teach at the middle school, they were able to build some relationships and help kids transition from that online world back into our building. And I've seen that be helpful this year already as they know some of those faces. As we talk data real quick, there was a lot of transition of kids coming back from online. We had a lot of tier 1 kids at a couple of the buildings. With the STAR results that we saw at K2, we had attendance of 198. That was after the registration of 240. 41 of the students were online during the school year. And we saw a focus there. We had a focus there of more reading, and we didn't take the STAR math test. The results there were 0.2 in the negative, but that just represents that it wasn't much of a slide in their scores from the first time they tested to the end of summer camp. Summer Camp 3.5 data, at Deke with Michelle, we had 124 students registered, and I think that was initially 125 and then changed. Of those, 95 students showed up for average attendance over the course of the 6 weeks. The STAR scores there, we had a growth of 0.08 in reading and then growth of 0.075, in math.
Before you move off of that, Nate, I don't know if you or Rod maybe want to explain for the board and anyone watching the significance of those numbers over the course of the summer and just that snapshot compared to what we would normally maybe see in a student.
Yeah, so every year during the summer, especially when you're looking at 3 months of having 0 academic activity, you will see a summer slide. So students generally will drop in their STAR math and reading, a half a grade level, or sometimes much larger than a half a grade level. So when you're talking 0.0 something here, what you're basically saying is there was no summer slide, which is huge, because having a summer slide for kids just means that you restart all of that learning in August and have to overcome the slide, whereas these kids experienced absolutely minimal slide or gains, and so they were able to start. And there was a couple other things that I don't know if Nate's going to mention it or not, but many of our kids were online, and they took the STAR at the end of the year in May and June, and their scores were really high. So we don't know if they had help or not, because we had no control over, but those scores were high. And so what you're really seeing is some of these kids getting a more natural score. So even there, where you saw growth or that very small, just tells you how far they came. They're all just catching their breath right now.
Yeah, really, it is. It's a. We definitely.
I'd like to see even more kids. I know you have an enormous amount of kids, but it'd be great to keep improving it and not have to slide like Rod said. I mean, that's amazing.
We definitely did learn a lot, and we have some ideas for next year. We gathered a lot of feedback from the kids and staff as well. So, moving on to the 6 to 8 data, similar story that we just talked about, so I don't need to read the slide to you. It was a slightly negative number of 0.17 for reading and then 0.9 for math with this group. I don't think I'm telling anyone in here anything new, but with middle schoolers, sometimes they get frustrated by the fact that they have to do another test on the computer, and you see kids do things like click through and not really try, right? So we obviously tried to combat that and motivate them to do their best as we could in this situation, but sometimes it still does happen. So again, I want to thank my team for doing such an awesome job. I personally think we had an all-star cast leading summer school at our sites. I think you guys would agree with me. And I want to thank you also for letting us present to you and show you and brag a little bit about what happened at summer camp. So thank you.
Thanks, Nate. Any questions for Nate or the other members of the team? Go ahead, Alicia.
I don't have questions, but I have comment. First of all, thank you all very, very much. I need a picture of one of those slides, Michelle. But second of all, actually, my comment is to the rest of the board. So I think to Chuck's comment, are we preparing for next year? And that's our obligation sitting up here, is to make sure that we keep that in mind, and especially as we budgetarily prepare, that I think we have, they have, we didn't do anything. Thank you. You have shown the benefit to this. And I think we need to embrace that and encourage as much as we can moving forward, that we provide this opportunity for our students. I think was also obviously a tremendous asset to have transportation available. I'm actually kind of surprised that there wasn't as much. I brought it to Ben to offer with the, what I call odd, but different timing of when the program was offered, being later in the morning and then earlier let out than a normal school day for working parents, especially kind of coming out of the brunt of the pandemic. We were a little more open and people were starting to get back to work over the summer and such. I expected more that actually needed that. So that was quite interesting, actually, to not see that need as much. And then I guess we got enough priorities, but I'd love to reach out to all those people that registered that didn't end up showing, and see if there's any way that we can maybe survey them or ask them, what barriers were there, like why didn't they take up on what they originally had thought. Oh, well, maybe you got an answer to that. Okay.
Some of the feedback was just along the lines of it butting right up to the school year when we finished. And then, of course, in the midst of that, we started right after the July 4th break, which was vacation for most people. Right. There was just a lot that people had going on. And when they realized and took a big snapshot of what their summer and what they wanted it to be, I think some of it was vacations and just other plans that they...
No, I can completely appreciate that. And actually, I had written down kind of an idea maybe to consider, especially as you're talking also, like you've got the star performers, your higher achievers, but also we're trying to, the initial focus was trying to fill that gap on those kids that may need that summer, the summer school, traditional summer school catch-up kind of thing. Maybe there's opportunity for two different offerings of, they're all shaking their head. That takes staff, that takes money, so I'm charging everybody across the table to make those considerations, but would love your feedback and ideas, and bring us proposals, and all we can do is evaluate them. And I think the benefits that came from this summer can only lead to greater things moving forward. Again, thank you very much.
Thank you.
I'd also just say, great job. It was so great to see everything. I'm also wondering about what kind of learning is happening. I know with Michelle, my son was at Deke for a couple of years with Michelle. Like what's being learned about in general. You talked about social workers, you talked about some of the other elements, and I know money doesn't grow on trees these days. But what are we learning about these special experiences that should be integrated into our school all year long? And I know we have great STEM in all of our elementary schools, but what are we continuing to learn that we don't just do as a special thing in the summer, but we're able to even little by little, if possible, where possible, integrate all year long? It feels like we're doing great things STEM-wise in that regard. But some of the other things you mentioned just made me think about that as well, and not just being in the summer.
So that's a really good question, and I think that we are able to see that transitioning starting where we're moving away from the typical classroom of here's your book, read the content, answer the questions, there's the bell, leave the room, here's your grade. Now we're talking about kind of flipping that a little bit, and it's easy to flip it with the students. So we call it a phenomena. Here's an experience, you see something occur, let's explore it, and let's discover what's happening here together. And then on our way there, we're going to learn a little bit of this, and we're going to learn some of this, and we're going to learn some of this, but we're going to learn it by doing it. And by doing it, it's going to stick. That's easy to do for the kids. It's harder to do for teachers because we're we're asking them to think about how they teach. And we're working very hard with teachers. At the middle school, more so now is where I spend a lot more of my time, because at the elementary level, that's kind of happened. They're using this applied learning concept. But at the middle school, it's still something that we're trying to evolve, and there are teachers that are doing a phenomenal job of it. It's exciting for me to be in that building and to see more and more embracing the idea and willing to at least try. This camp experience, when we can pull those teachers into that camp experience, gives them an opportunity to explore it without expectations. They can explore it from any direction they want, and we'll be there to guide them, to answer their questions, and to support them. And then they get that excitement. We hear about, I feel rejuvenated and I'm ready to go back to the classroom. I had English teachers saying, how can I use applied learning to teach my ELA? Math teachers, in fact, I had one at the middle school stop me in the hallway today. When are you going to stop by? I have a lesson coming up and I want to know how to convert this. So we know it's happening, but it has to evolve. And that's the process we're in right now.
Thank you.
That was great questions, because assignments are different than learning. And if we motivate our teachers, which it seems like you're doing this with the summer school program, so it's a twofold project. I've taught for many moons, and it's like you have to learn and figure things out for yourself, and we're there to assist you to figure that out. And I think that I don't think our district's like this, but I think a lot of districts, here's your assignment, have a nice day, bring it in, we'll take a test tomorrow. And I commend you if that's the way you guys are acting, because that's great, and I think that's what this board likes. And I can't say enough, the board's always complimenting you guys, so thank you. But that's what we want. We want, it's a learning process. You guys are learning, and that's very encouraging that you're saying that, and that makes me feel good that the teachers are willing to, I'm losing the word now.
Embrace.
Comfort zone.
No, not conform, help me out here, guys. Adapt, yes, who said that, Carrie? Thank you, Carrie. To adapt and help our children during these trying times, because now, especially with COVID, it's like, here's your book, read this chapter, take the test. That's not good for a kid. They have to be motivated and cultivated and giving them food and fertilizer and all this stuff to make that brain work. So that's very, very, very encouraging that you say that. That's great. Made my day. Thank you.
Go ahead, Jessica.
Number one, thank you for doing an amazing and outstanding job. And a little bit to piggyback off of what Alyssa said, can any of you speak to not only what you found to carry forward as far as teaching and with the teachers, but with the social workers? Is there anything that you can speak to that we found about our students or our kiddos from the social work aspect that you're aware of for us going into the school year and throughout the year?
I just think that social emotional learning piece is huge. That's why the state recognized that and put it into all schools' educational plans. My KIP, we have to have a whole child goal. So I think that's just a huge piece that you're wrapping around children, right? To hit all levels, academic and behavior. And it was just a huge benefit to us for us to be able to do that this year in a summer camp style.
Can I ask one question? Do you know, or are you aware of, are kids needing many external resources, and are we doing a pretty good job if they do need them, of getting them to them, or is that not necessarily so much?
I think when the signs are there, we are. I mean, that's what we saw at summer camp, at least. Another thing that's not so related, I guess, but the team building that the social workers were able to do, I wouldn't say it's not happening in the regular school year. It probably is, but it was really awesome to see them just take all this, this group of students that not all of them needed the extra attention or social emotional support, but they all benefited from it, and they all, came out stronger as a group because they received that attention. So I don't think you can ever have too much attention as a teenager or kid. So.
Great, thanks a lot.
One last call for comments. Go ahead, Rod.
I just want to thank them again. It's great to work with people who say yes, and when you come up with an idea, and these people, Katie said yes at the last minute, and they all embraced something that we've never done before. And specifically back to 5 years ago when I approached Michelle and said, I want to change the way we do summer school, and I really like what you're doing with Deke Summer Camp. Do you mind helping this transition happen? And she said, yes, let's do it. And so you're looking at year 5 here of a transition, and someone said, well, how does this look, in all the classrooms? And, our value is we believe in continuous learning. And before that, we had a belief statement that said we believe in a culture of learning. And I think you're seeing that progression across many levels. So something as simple as a building getting rid of all desks and going to tables and going to collaborative groupings. The STEM and the project lead the way. Kids, I think, got a project lead the way. I don't know when, it was 4 or 5 years ago, we had an open house at the middle school, and they said, well, I want every class to be like this. Well, that's what they said at summer school, too. It's that hands-on, really digging into learning. And so, we have challenged staff. I talked about it in the opening day in my session about embracing, digging into these, really deep thinking activities that really embrace that collaboration and that thinking and that problem solving. So just very excited on every small step we take because it builds on the step before that. And these guys have done an awesome job just kind of spreading that culture of learning.
I got one more comment, Madam, if that's okay. Yes. I'd like to just circle back that this example too, when we say what are we learning from this that we're taking back into the regular classroom, is this model we have embraced and will continue to embrace moving forward by changing our elementary school model. And that's because we put kids of like ages with teachers of the same group, and the teachers collaboratively work together in that age group. And it has fostered greater opportunities, greater learning approaches to doing the like and same programming all at the same level. And then you can adapt that and move it forward. I mean, this model is exactly what we're doing now across the entire year. So you have a curriculum at 1-2 focused around literacy that then you can take up and move to 3-5 and expound on that and then keep moving it on. So I'm grateful that you're all shaking your head and agreeing with me. But I say that to just, kind of bring it back full circle, is that's our obligation up here, is to make sure that we embrace these opportunities and then continue them throughout our district. And I think we're doing fantastic things with our curriculum, and this is why.
Well said. So I'm going to ask Michelle a question. How long ago did you start the STEM program at Deke?
This is my 9th year in STEM.
So your first year of students have graduated, or may have graduated. Yes. So all of those kids after that have benefited, to your point, Alicia. We're basically growing children in this district to have this experience and to share that. And I'm really grateful to all of you, Nate, Amy, Becky, Michelle, and Katie, and Travis, and Rod, and Ben, and our food service folks, our transportation folks, all the people who contributed, our staff, who gave up some of their summertime. I know they were compensated, but I think they would, based on what you said, they would say it was worthwhile their time. And so and of course our students are the beneficiaries of all of your hard work. And I hope that we continue to have these conversations. I know we're gonna have a conversation about our Esser funds, and we did at our last board meeting. And so hopefully we will continue down that path with a strong focus. And as we do our strategic planning, I know later this fall, we'll really be looking at these types of programs. And so thank you from the bottom of our hearts. Thank you so much. All right, if you'd like to leave, you may. We'll give you the permission to exit. We know you have other things to do.
And deserve a long nap.
And thank you so, so much. Bye, team. All right, we're moving on. Ben, you have a Gaines Elementary information update, as promised.
I'd like to Just update the board. Travis, if you can flip to the Gaines Elementary School website, I want to kind of show this. If you go to the Gaines Elementary School website and you kind of hover over the General Info tab, and you click on that first button, it's going to pull up the information sharing schedule that I shared out at our last board meeting. And so obviously coming up in October, we're going to have our enrollment updates. It's going to be after count day. We'll have definitive numbers to share out. I'll talk a little bit about that tonight. We'll also have our updated financial scenario reports, but this document that you got and we passed out and distributed last board meeting is out there, so anyone that's interested can see when, you know, anything is expected on Gaines Elementary School. This date, September 15th, and these do coincide with a lot of our board meeting dates, we're going to be providing a frequently asked questions document. So Travis, if you can back out of this screen. If you go down, that frequently asked questions document is right there. So if you click on it, that looks like that's the same document. So Travis, I'm not sure if you have the other one maybe loaded in. We can pull that one up. So essentially what we've done is we've taken a lot of the frequently asked questions that we've been getting. This is certainly not an exhaustive list of questions, but it's a living document that we can kind of build upon. And so, you know, these are definitely questions that we get a lot and that have come up in both of the town halls. We're going to have several town halls scheduled later this fall and into the early winter. But this will give you an opportunity to just look through a handful of things. I definitely will share updates to that throughout the year. So one update that I think is timely, we had 139 students leading into the pandemic. So this is a year and a half ago. Part of the reason why the conversation came up was obviously, you know, the 120 that we were seeing, which is a significant percentage drop. That would have been the largest decrease in a number of years. And so the hope, of course, is that we see that number rising. You know, one of the conversations that was had was, well, we have these early 5 students and the only program for them is at Cyrene and at Moorish. And that's a factual statement because it's difficult, it's not difficult, it's impossible to run a classroom with 7 children. It's just not a reasonable expectation. So for families, the assumption was, you know, if you want an early 5s program, then you can take it, but you're going to have to take it at Moorish or Cyrene. And then, of course, you can come back to Gaines starting in 1st grade or if you transition to a year kindergarten. The issue is that a lot of times students stayed at that building, so that was a legitimate question or concern that was prompted. And so we actually reached out, Principal Preer called all of the families that were, you know, had eligible for early 5s, and every one of them chose to stay in kindergarten. They're certainly kindergarten age at Gaines, and so we left those students there. And so we do anticipate that hopefully, you know, we're seeing early signs are good that number is going to be higher than 120. Whether or not it's going to be reaching back to that 139 pre-pandemic rate, we don't know. But, you know, those are things that we're going to be reporting on in October. So just want to make sure you know where those resources are at, or anyone that, you know, is interested can find those documents. They're certainly not exhaustive, but we can continue to provide that information as we obtain it, and it'll be a living document that we can add to throughout. So happy to answer any questions you have at this time, and certainly there'll be more information as we come up on those next deadlines, such as the financial statistics and enrollment trends that we're going to see in October.
Any questions for Ben?
I do, Madam
Go ahead.
President. Just one, and it has to do with Gaines, but all of our buildings as a whole. When the mask mandate was put in place, Ben, by the Genesee County Health Department, did we lose a significant amount of students? I mean, is that number, and I apologize, I missed last meeting, so I don't know, but I don't think it was enforced then. So how many, if we had 3,500, maybe Rod knows if you know, and how many did it go down when they said the mask mandate is enforced and some parents said, okay, I'm done with the mask mandate because it's so polarizing? How many students did we lose, or don't you have that number yet?
Yeah, I can give you, and so that's kind of what I've said in the past. We try to, we don't give out hard numbers because those numbers change significantly
so quickly
each year. But What I will say is that early indications of enrollments prior to the school year starting and actually even leading in, prior to the mask mandate, were showing us up pretty significantly. That is not the case anymore. And so we saw a significant drop off to the tune of maybe even up to 150 students that what we originally saw that have chosen to do something different. And it's not going to another Genesee County school. It's either going out of county or homeschool.
They're not going to school at all.
Correct.
Yeah.
And so we saw a large number choose that option. Obviously, we want to see all of our kids in the district come to school, but that was a choice that parents made. So, and that completely is not in our control, but that certainly is some statistics that we'll be able to have.
Tentative numbers is what you're saying. Well, that's interesting, and I think we need to relay that to all our district parents because it hurts the school as a whole. I think when a lot of kids drop out financially, and it's really not in our control as a board. I think this board was kind of an agreement that we're just going to let people make the choice. A couple months ago, I'm not speaking for all of us, but that was kind of the consensus, and that we were mandated by a third party to do something by law, and then the school district could suffer because of a third party. And I think the parents, I don't want to hey, help us out. But it's an appeal to parents. It's like, hey, listen, this is out of the school board's control. We have no control over it. If you take a couple hundred students out and they may go somewhere else, that's fine. But, as a whole, we're hurting our district, I think. And I don't know. I don't know how we can relay that. And I don't even know if it's
You can always take a stand.
an argument. Yeah. So I don't know what we can do, Ben, to correct it in the future. So I don't know. It's just food for thought. I know all board members have thought the same thing I have, and we're all pretty cohesive, most of us. We're all together on things, but I don't know. I don't want to see it to hurt the district as a whole if we keep losing students and they're homeschooled or that. And as I said, it's not really in the board's control. Somebody's coming in and telling us this is what we have to do. So thanks for that number, Ben.
Thanks, Chuck.
Thank you, Carrie.
Anything else, Ben?
Not at this time. I have a lot more to share in October, obviously.
We'll have more hard numbers is what you're saying? Yep. Thank you.
All right, let's move on to our Esser funds discussion.
Certainly. So we talked about this at the Finance Committee quite a bit, and there's, tonight for your consideration, we're asking for you to appropriate about 1.6 million of the Esser 2 funds, which, just to give you the background, a lot of those Esser dollars that are federal grant dollars, they take a while to filter down to us. We're talking about dollars that were appropriated back early spring last year, and we're still not seeing those dollars able to be accessed. So right now, as it stands, we have had approval for Esser 2 funds, and our original plan in our application was to run summer school. You just heard the great presentation. So those were funded through the Esser 2 funds as the board approved that months ago. The second half of Esser 2 is becoming available, and what our plan would be is to look at air quality improvements such as air filters and air filtration systems, bringing fresh air into classrooms. It's very much a allowable expenditure within Esser. And so for Esser 2, just to put that to bed tonight for your consideration is the appropriation of that 1.6 million to go towards those. Now, fast forward, and now we're going to start talking about Esser 3. And Esser 3, which we broached the subject last meeting, and I think Alyssa had suggested, we get some feedback from different stakeholders. We are starting that process. We've had one stakeholder meeting. We're going to start to branch out to students and staff, teachers, support staff, and then even figure out a way to maybe do some surveying of families if there's an interest there. And I think Alyssa has volunteered to help with some of the facilitation of that. But one of the things that just raw information is that the district is going to be receiving about $4.5 million of Esser 3 funds. Now, these funds, again, have the same allowable uses that the Esser 2 funds have, but the district is going to have some discretion over, obviously what programs do we want to look at. So there are some things that we can do to maybe provide some additional flexibility to the district for those funds, some things that we're working on with the accountants and also the Michigan Department of Education. But more is going to be being released. And so I wanted to give you kind of a timeline so you understand what we're dealing with. We have, the application is going to be open in the system starting over the next few weeks. It's still not open yet, but it's going to be open over the next few weeks. The application deadline that they've tentatively set is December 11th. So it gives you an idea, and that doesn't mean we have to have the money. I mean, we don't even have the money yet. They just told us how much we're getting. And so by December 11th, what we would want to be prepared for is to approve a plan that we would submit and say, this is how we want to spend the $4.5 million. And we're looking at high level at this point. So we've talked about everything from temperature checking machines to therapy animals to added curriculum, reading curriculum. There's a whole host of things. But I wanted you to understand the mechanics and the logistics of when those dollars would become available. They're also looking at about a 2 to 3 year spend period. So that means that those dollars would have to be expensed over the course of the next 3 years. There are some options, as I said, about ways to make provide the district with even more flexibility to maybe even use the money longer. We're looking into the allowable uses and legalities of all of that, and if we can provide the flexibility, we will. But I think suffice it to say, you asked the question, Alicia, and Chuck has asked the question about how do we invest in this summer school again? I mean, certainly one of the allocations could be to say, we want to take a chunk of those dollars and make sure what happened, this summer happens again, or we even expand it if we can, right? And so those are options that you'll have available to you with those funds, at least for the next few years. And so it's very exciting. 20% of those funds have to be spent on learning loss. And I believe that we can spend more than that, but certainly there are a lot of ideas that are going to come forward. So I just want to kind of give you an update. And then if you guys have questions or anything about that that you'd like to ask, I can answer those.
Is that 20% over the course of the 2 to 3 years that we have to spend it then?
It is, yep, it's over the spend period. And as I said, we'll be looking over the course of the next few weeks when we can get the application in our hands. Then it will be, okay, how do we want to parcel this out? So we want to spend, $100,000 on, reading materials. We want to spend, where those things are. The one prevailing, thought here is that you want to obviously use the dollars to fund something that will help, with the learning loss that's occurred over COVID and those types of things. So I think there are a lot of good ideas that are being generated and more to come, but just kind of so you have the timeline, December 11th is when there's a tentative date out there to submit the application, but that doesn't mean the funds are going to be spent or even in yet. It's really the spend period over the next 2 to 3 years is kind of what we're looking at.
So related to the summer school, what kind of planning would we have to do financially in the event that those funds don't come until much later?
I have pretty high levels of confidence that we'll have the funds for summer school.
Okay.
Certainly, I'm hoping that we'll have the funds before the end of this calendar year, but at least a portion. The legislature has to appropriate the funds. So the funds are sitting in an account earmarked for Swartz Creek schools, but the legislature in Lansing has to decide when, how they're going to appropriate them. That's a kind of a brokered deal with the governor's office as well. So that sometimes takes time. They're still working on their budgets right now, but once they get allocated, then we'll be able to start drawing on them. And so I'm hoping, I think I can say with pretty high levels of confidence, we'll have the monies if you wanted to allocate those funds for summer school next year.
Carrie, can I cut in just
Sure,
a
go
second?
ahead.
And that's a great question that you had, Carrie. I think that having a healthy fund balance, which I want, I want always a little extra in the bank. If for some reason they didn't come in, we could use part of our fund balance and pay ourselves back, of course. We've done that with grant money before, and Esser funds are now a little different, but I don't want to do that, but if worst case scenario, could we do that, Ben? If they for some reason, there was a hiccup in the politics of it all at the state level?
Mm-hmm. Certainly, I'd want to defer to Chris, but
yes.
Ultimately, our auditors would be the ones. Our auditors would be able to say that would be an allowable transaction, right?
That's my suggestion. Can we ask that?
Yeah.
Maybe the board can make a better decision saying if we go through with something, geez, we're not, for something to happen, the money's not gonna be here on time, but we do have some fund balance to commit to this, knowing, guaranteed that we are getting this money to put back into our fund balance. I mean, I wouldn't be opposed to it as long as the auditors are up with it, and that was my question. But thank you, Carrie. That's what I wanted to say about that issue.
Anyone else?
Well, I think we just, we do have an obligation in evaluating options. It's the fact that we do have to sustain whatever, if we're looking at programming, you know, hard, tangible, one-time expense type things are somewhat more, of not a priority, but those are almost more feasible through this allocation versus a programming investment that we then have to keep up. So albeit it may be great to spearhead and develop a new program so that we can sustain a summer program like that, we also have to be mindful that we have to be able to keep that going. So I guess I just ask, and I don't know if you have this readily available, Ben, and if not, if it's feasible, I would never ask for something to be extra on top of the bajillion things you guys have going on right now, but do we have a breakdown of really how much the summer school itself essentially cost us? And then if we have kind of a gauge on how we want to expand that moving forward, what would be our ongoing expense so that we can evaluate that moving forward?
Sure. So summer school expenditures, and Rod, you may want to jump in here because you're closer into this than me. I believe it was just shy of 400,000. Is that correct?
Correct.
Yeah. So around 378,000, I think, is what was expensed out of the grant, and that's all. And that's because, right, we fed, transported, child cared, you know, and quadrupled the number of kids. So when you factor all those things in, obviously it's a much more significant budget.
We also normally paid each section, 2 weeks at a time. We ran 6 weeks per section. So you're talking about more hours, 3 times per level. And we also paid rates that were almost double, triple our rates in the past. And everyone who joined knew that because they were giving up their summer, that was the compensation. And that's not always going to be the compensation levels. And even the time frame. They said, from the 2-week periods that we ran in the past to the 6-week periods, a happy medium would be a 4-week period and not so close to, the start of school. And so there's lots of things that can be adjusted to bring that down a little bit. But just so you know, out of that risk, every year we spent about $50,000. And that was on the traditional programming before. So, I mean, we did have a tremendous amount of increase, but there are ways to have similar program and still have a decrease as well.
Thank you. Rod, again, how many students on average participate? I was trying to do a per student cost with that.
Yeah, we used to get anywhere, so on average 100 kids. And then this time, they said 440, but I saw a lot of drops. So I'd say, so we went from 100 to 400. And we went from 50,000 to, 375.
Okay, so less than 1,000 a student. As far as, and then even cutting more, so that's not bad.
Even compared to regular school, maybe we should just have summer school all year long. I've done the math a million times, and it's costing us $10,000 to $14,000 a year to educate a kid. And I know it's during the whole year. But these teachers are accelerating everything and doing it for $1,000. That's a freaking bargain. So we almost have to commit to it, and we'll get our Esser funds, and if we have to pay for it from another worst case scenario, another line item, we can do it as long as our auditors say it's okay, and then transfer the money back. That's usually normal accounting for municipalities. It's all up front, it's transparent where we're taking it from, where we're putting it, and then we're putting it back. And like I said, maybe Carrie or Ben call the auditors and ask them what they say. And Greg, that's a great question.
Can I go back to what you started with? You said so roughly cost us $400,000. And then did you say only 75 was actually allocated? And then, so we picked up the remainder? Or did I miss something?
So of the ESSER 2 funds, they appropriated originally like 49%, and then the 51% was just recently authorized, which is why we're talking about the air control, filters, the HVAC systems.
No, I mean, how much we spent on the summer school. I'm sorry.
Oh, yeah, we would spend, typically, we had a budget of between 50 and 75,000.
We spent 400, and was that grant funded?
We spent less than 400.
Okay.
You know, about $297,000 were Esser 2 funds, and then we had some additional summer school grants plus our at-risk money. So, you know, I don't want to give you wrong information.
No.
It's under 400,000, but north of 350,000.
And the social workers, they came out a whole different grant. I mean, so there's a lot of different pots of money that made up from the 290 to the 375.
And we had increased costs for food and buses. Yeah. So that was something that a lot of summer schools, I think, a lot of the kids are brought by their parents, and this year was unique that.
Yeah.
we
I was
provided.
looking more for, you know, was there a big chunk that we still offset and ended up with a 16.8 fund balance, even though we were doing it out of our general fund anyway? So, you know, whether to consider that we really can cover it with our own funding, or do we really need to focus on ESSER funding, developing that program moving forward?
You know, as we've said hundreds of times, the board, right? You have the roles of the superintendent, the roles of the board. One of the primary roles of the board is allocating the funding, right? So you guys are ultimately going to be the people elected to decide that. I mean, so if you say we want you to prioritize this, then that becomes how we build the budget around that. And then Chris and I work together to figure out how to implement that. So yeah, I mean, I think it's really a matter of what do you prioritize and value as you're going through those budgetary discussions.
Okay, so great discussion. I think our resolution tonight really addresses the air quality, right?
Yeah,
But-
the resolution for approval tonight is just for the remaining ESSER 2. The big chunk, the 4.5, that's what we're talking about, really having the deeper discussion about. The remaining ESSER 2 is just to do the air quality, and there may be more air quality work that we want to do, doors, windows, those types of things with ESSER 3 funds that you'd have the ability to do if you so chose.
Blue lights.
And blue
Remember, I
lights.
brought up blue lights at building committee, but to speed it up, Carrie, if that's okay, I'll make a motion that we go ahead and allocate the funds.
Well,
Are we gonna do
actually,
it?
we do.
It's already on our action
Okay,
items.
all right.
Yeah, we
okay.
do have one. Thanks, though, Chuck.
Yep, okay.
Thanks. All right, okay. Any other questions or comments for Ben or Rod or anyone else? All right. The good news is we have this money either in our possession or coming to us that we can be very creative for our students.
Yep.
All right, moving on. We have several board action items, most of them related to SCEA employment.
Yeah, I'd like to introduce Mr. Simonson to come on up, and this is a very exciting time, so we'll start with Mr. Simonson.
Good evening. Thank you for having us in. It's been a couple of years since I've done this hiring thing, so we've been fortunate to not have to replace too many teachers over at Elms Road. So, but it's been a busy summer, and we've had 3 recently. So, but we're real happy. We brought Mandy in. She's coming to us from Carmen Ainsworth, and very impressed with her resume. And I'll just say this, that I think she just speaks the language for Swartz Creek. I interviewed along with Rod and Ben in the room, and we were all very impressed with her answers to the questions, and she's already hit the ground running, starting yesterday, I think was your first day, right? And is, really worked all afternoon before this meeting, and is, got plans for the room here moving forward, but making good relationships with the kids, and we like what we see, so we're glad to have her aboard. And this is Mandy Rendon, I'm sorry, is her name.
Nice to meet you.
Well, so do you have anything you'd like to say to the board? We usually give our candidates an opportunity.
I'm really grateful for the opportunity. I'm looking forward to getting to know my 4th graders and building those relationships and just having a really good year.
Thank you. Welcome.
Thank you.
All right. With that, I would entertain a motion. Chuck?
Board.
Ryan? Any comments or questions? Be it resolved, the Swartz Creek Community Schools Board of Education approves the SCEA employment of Mandy Palin Rendon, fourth grade teacher at Elms Road Elementary as presented. Sue, could you do roll call, please?
Brian Sapanic,
Yes.
Chuck Melkey.
Yes.
Carrie Germain.
Yes.
John Sayer.
Yes.
Jessica Lenave.
Yes.
Alicia Gardner.
Yes.
Alyssa Parks.
Yes.
7 yes.
Motion passes. Welcome.
Congratulations.
All right, next we have approval of SCEA employment for Lisa Chapman. Go ahead.
I'm going to ask Mrs. Freer to come on up.
So, good evening. I'm excited to present to the board Lisa Chapman, a 22-year veteran in K-2 education. She comes to us from Linden Charter Academy. She has the 1-2 grade level assignment at Gaines Elementary, so she's out with us out there. I've checked in with her each day since she's been here. This has been her first week. She started on Monday. It's beautiful. The children are engaged. They're learning their routines and procedures. They are using manipulatives, and so it's a beautiful thing. She holds a degree from U of M Flint with a ZA endorsement, so I present to the board for recommendation, Lisa Chapman.
Welcome, Lisa. Would you like to say some words to the board?
I'm just thrilled to be part of Swartz Creek. I've gotten to know the students. I've been with them for a week, building those relationships, and it's just an awesome start to the year.
Welcome. All right, with that, I would entertain a motion for approval.
So moved.
Support.
Jack and Chuck. All right. Any comments or questions? Be it resolved that the Swartz Creek Community Schools Board of Education approves the SCEA employment of Lisa Chapman, first and second grade teacher at Gaines Elementary as presented. Sue, could you do roll call, please?
Carrie Germain.
Yes.
Alyssa Parks.
Yes.
Chuck Melkey.
Yes.
Alicia Gardner.
Yes.
Brian Sapanic.
Yes.
Jessica Lenave.
Yes.
John Sayer.
Yes.
7 yes.
Motion passes. Welcome.
Next, I'll have Mr. Heatherton.
Yeah, I'll have Mr. Kevin Powers come up to the mic there. As you know, we've had an opening at the VLC, and we posted it in a unique perspective, and that is that it would be a PLC coordinator, but also half-time work as a tech instructional specialist, someone who could really integrate technology in with our staff. And Kevin was an amazing fit. He comes to us from Fenton as both a longtime teacher and their tech director most recently. And so he has a passion for really getting into technology, into learning, into helping teachers understand how to integrate things, but also as a teacher, really, how to help kids learn. So we have this, unique opening where we're wanting someone to grow the program and be passionate about the VLC, but also someone who wants to, make a big difference on the tech that's being used across the district. So I present to you Mr. Kevin Powers. Kevin, why don't you just say a little bit about yourself there?
Good evening, everyone. I just first like to say thank you. This is truly a blessing for me, having spent 8 years really out of the classroom, really focused more on designing and implementing technology and working exclusively with staff. I've got about 8 years of bottled up passion for kids that I'm really ready to bring to the table. And I've got a great staff at the VLC. And again, I'd just like to thank this group for really blessing me with this opportunity to get back to serving kids that really need some mentoring at this time in their life. So thank you.
Well, Kevin, I want to thank you for choosing Swartz Creek.
Thank you.
I know if you're making a decision to move somewhere, you have a lot of options and are probably very marketable. So we're grateful that you chose us.
Thank you. Thank you for saying that.
And with that, I would entertain a motion for approval.
So moved.
Okay, we're going to do Brian and Jessica. Any comments or questions?
I have a couple of questions, if I may. When we were talking about this the other day, I was curious, and I'm only a little bit sorry to put you on the spot.
No, that's okay. I'm a former technology director.
Number one, the VLC is near and dear to my heart, so I'm wondering if you have any kind of, what your vision is for it, if you have one. Yeah, and secondly, why'd you come to Creek?
First question. Right now, I've been in the office for about a week, and right now, I would say the things that really stare out to me are we have a graduation rate issue that needs to be put right at the forefront, proficiency that needs to be addressed, building the capacity of the staff that we have, and then looking at some environmental changes just inside of the VLC. Concerned a little bit about 6 hours facing a computer, facing a wall, that kind of thing. So really, I want to dig into the research and find out really how we can change that and make that a place people want to come to once they're involved in it. So that's where I'm at right now, a week in. So.
Awesome.
And the second question was, why Creek? So I have some good relationships already with Swartz Creek staff. Rod and I have known each other for quite some time. I have a very deep respect for Travis. He and I kind of came into this at about the same time and have been really close. And I grew up in Durand. So for me, this is more like where I'm from. And that's not to knock Fenton, but this felt a lot like my hometown. So just being around here, it's just been amazing driving into work. I still live south of Fenton, but it's been amazing driving into work here. Just having that feeling again of being in a hometown, if I could say it that way. So yeah, that'd be why. You're very welcome. You're very welcome.
All right.
Can I make one more comment? Thank you for saying that we've blessed you, but honestly, I only envision that you're going to bless the community and our district. So thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Be it resolved that the Swartz Creek Community Schools Board of Education approves the employment of Kevin Powers, VLC Coordinator and Instructional Technology Specialist as presented. Sue, could you do roll call, please?
John Sayer,
Yes.
Jessica Lenave,
Yes.
Alicia Gardner,
Yes.
Chuck Melkey,
Yes.
Alyssa Parks,
Yes.
Carrie Germain,
Yes.
Brian Sapanic.
Yes.
7 yes.
Motion passes. Congratulations.
Thank you, guys.
You're not on speaker, Carrie.
Oh, I'm sorry. Let's take a 5-minute break.
Let me touch this. I make a motion that we take a 5-minute break for restroom purposes and give the audience a break and
Okay.
everyone that needs it.
Do I have support for that?
Yes.
Okay. Any comments or questions? If none, those in We good? All right. The meeting is back in session. All right, continuing with our board action items. We now have the approval of safe routes to school, an easement that's been requested.
Yeah, so as you well know, for the past couple of years, we've been working in a partnership with the city to create a more walkable city for our students. The three schools that we are primarily looking at are Cyrene, the middle school, and Elms Road. And so the first project that's going to get underway is actually a walking path from Apple Creek Village, I think is the name of the apartment complex that is on Morris Road. And there'll be a walking path constructed on the north side of Swartz Creek. And so in order for that to happen and for that to commence, that is technically district property right there on our property line. The city technically needs an easement to be able to do that. So for your consideration tonight is just simply complying or collaborating with the city to give them the easement to build that walking path for the children to access the middle school.
All right, with that, I would entertain a motion for approval.
Can I ask a question first, Carrie, discussion? I just want to know where the path ends up at, the first portion of it.
So it's going, and I apologize, I should have known the name of the complex, but the apartment buildings on Morris Road.
It's Apple Creek.
I think it's Apple Creek.
Yep.
There will be a path connecting that area, because we have a lot of walkers in there,
Right.
and they have to walk around and come down Crapo Street.
Yes.
So this will create a direct path for them to walk on the north side of the creek through there into the middle school sidewalk area. So it'll create a safe path for them to.
So this first phase is going from there to our middle school.
Correct.
That's all I wanted to know. Thank you, Carrie. Thank you.
Sure. With that, I would entertain a motion for approval.
So moved.
Support.
John and I think Alyssa. Any comments or questions? Be it resolved that the Swartz Creek Community Schools Board of Education approves the safe routes to school easements as presented. Sue, could you take roll call, please?
Alicia Gardner,
Yes.
Jessica Lenave,
Yes.
John Sayer,
Yes.
Brian Sapanic,
Yes.
Alyssa Parks,
Yes.
Chuck Melkey,
Yes.
Carrie Germain.
Yes.
7 yes.
Motion passes. Thank you. All right, moving on to our last action item, approval of the Esser 2 allocation that was discussed earlier related to the air quality systems and equipment at the middle school and high school.
So moved.
Support.
Was that Chuck and John? Okay. Any comments or questions? Be it resolved that the Swartz Creek Community Schools Board of Education approves the Esser 2 allocation approval as presented. Sue, could you do roll call, please?
John Sayer,
Yes.
Jessica Lenave,
Yes.
Alicia Gardner,
Yes.
Chuck Melkey,
Yes.
Alyssa Parks,
Yes.
Carrie Germain,
Yes.
Brian Sapanic.
Yes.
7 yes.
Motion passes. Thank you. All right, moving on, we have an opportunity for public comment. If you'd like to address the board, please step forward to the podium, state your name, and keep your comments to 3 minutes or less, please. It's on. It's on.
All right, I'm super tired and you are too, so I'll make my comments quick. First off, thank you for hiring a new first grade teacher, K-1 teacher. Thank you for housing the E5s at Gaines Elementary. I am very positive it's a very positive step that we had to do that, so I'm very grateful for that. Thank you for that. I'm really pleased to see that. How many classes are at Gaines? I know we initially were going to have a K-1 split and then a 3-4 split. So I'm curious what splits we ended up with, how many classes we have, how many full classes we have at Gaines. And where are the lists? When we had our town hall meetings, we wrote down suggestions. And there were some pads of paper with suggestions on them. I was wondering where those are, if any of those have been discussed, what has come of those. And also, is there still a town hall scheduled for October 27th at 5:30? That's all. Have a great night. Thank you.
Thanks, Melissa. Ben said he can address some of those questions.
Yeah, so first of all, as it relates to the building, we have a K-1 split. We also have a 1-2 split, and then we have a 3rd grade, a 4th grade, and a 5th grade single class. So with that being said, and there may be some nuanced differences there, I'd ask Principal Preer to clear that up, but I can tell you that we do have 5 instructors out there as general ed teachers. The other question was in relation to the ideas. Those are electronically captured, so we have those. Those have been discussed with certain groups of people. I wouldn't say they've been discussed broadly, but we certainly do have access to those, and those are things that we'll be considering as we look at putting out new financial projections, in the upcoming weeks. And I'm sorry, I missed the third question.
Town hall date.
The town hall meeting, yes, yep, that will be as scheduled. Sure. The early fives children, they're to be eligible for early fives is about a birthday, right? So the question was, would you rather go to kindergarten at Gaines Elementary School, or would you rather go to E5s at Morris or Cyrene? And they chose to go to kindergarten at Gaines Elementary School. So, yep.
Can you reiterate that date and time of that town hall?
October 27th, I believe is the date. Is that correct? At 5:30 p.m.
Thank you.
Will Sue get that on our calendars, please?
Yes.
If it's not already on there, it may be already on there. I haven't checked. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, anyone else?
When I say you, I am referring to those who will not stand up for the liberty of our students' rights and free will of medical autonomy and privacy. Enforcing masks desensitizes their will to protect themselves from oppressive forces and predators, expecting them to just fall in line to authority without question, no matter what or how unreasonable, violates their free will and protective ability to say no. Psychological health requires the need to reason things through to make sound choices. Children and adults need to be given the fair evidence, informed consent to make for themselves choices that are reasonable and true. The current so-called scientific evidence and statistics on anything COVID is censored, faulty, unproven, and illogical. It is based on fear, lies, and control. You can pour water through its holes all day long. A cumulative source control protection with surgical masks is just another tactic to keep leverage against our freedoms. This is not an emergency, so how can the health department mandate anything? Furthermore, I thought making good choices was part of the curriculum for our pre- and elementary schoolers. How will our students develop self-worth and esteem if they have no identity other than how they are controlled? How is it that those who identify themselves as having innate immunity are discriminated against? This is a class action lawsuit for those of you who wish to push or pin our children down under fascistic medicine. Medical enforcement is abuse and against the Nuremberg Code. Those who were found guilty of this crime against humanity were put to death for their violations. The science isn't exact. How do you lord one over another? Our children are not robots. How dare you treat them as pawns in this communist freak show? God himself does not force people to choose his own righteousness. He is big on free will. How is it that you put yourselves over God by enforcing facial and breathing restrictions on our kids? It is not your place to make or enforce laws that tie the hands of parents and the children you serve. You are out of order to follow political tyranny. You cannot serve two masters. You will either love one and hate the other. You must choose not to straddle the fences in this matter. You are either for freedom or not. You vowed to uphold an oath to the Michigan Constitution that you would not restrict the breath, communication, dignity, and autonomy of the children of our communities. Thank you.
Madam President.
You are all very brilliant, but liberty is what is most important.
Thank you. Alicia.
Madam President, can you please comment, if you will, on that, but also to the general public, our obligation and legal stance as board members and as a district as a whole?
Sure. As Mr. Micah stated at the beginning of the meeting, we have consulted with a variety of attorneys, and we are required by law to follow the direction of the Genesee County Health Department, and we are doing so consistently as we have over the last 18 months. And additionally, each of us individually could be at risk if we don't follow those rules. So as a board, as a school district, and individuals. And so we're following those directions very closely. Ben is in close contact with those folks on a regular basis, and we are very confident that the information that we're getting is consistent with what we're doing, and that we're able to pivot very quickly when things change, as you will see they are doing on a regular basis. So with that, I would ask anyone else who needs to or wants to. Go ahead, Ben.
Can I make a comment? Thank you for your comments, by the way. I do want to just address one thing so that there's maybe some clarity as well. The Michigan Public Health Code, which is a legislatively acted on health code, the legislature in the state makes the law. The Michigan Public Health Code, which is a Michigan Common Law 333.2451, also 333.2453, and 333.2465, that is legislatively acted on by the legal authority to make laws in this state, authorizes the health department to issue such orders. We have looked into this. We're not just on a whim deciding to follow blindly. I can tell you that this is required and it is law. There are many attorneys who have determined that. So I understand there's a false or there's a lot of misinformation out there. We have been consistent. Whether we agree or disagree, we've kind of made that fairly clear. We're under obligation under the law, and those are the Michigan common law statutes to support that.
Thanks, Ben. Anyone else who'd like to address the board? And please state your name too, please.
My name is Michelle Sharon. I don't have children at any of your school districts. My children are 35 and 32. They live in Florida. Those masks that you're all wearing, the box, look at a box. Here's a picture. They specifically say, sorry, I put my old lady glass on. They do not prevent the contraction of any disease or infection. They don't. Dr. Hacker, who's making these laws for these poor children, somebody was talking earlier, they were talking about mental health. You're looking for money to spend? Put it in mental health. These kids are committing suicide on an unstoppable rate because of this. You want to protect your children? You want to talk about budgets? You're going to have no children. There's going to be no children. People are going to pull them out left and right. Where should they be? In schools. I don't believe in homeschooling. I believe in school districts. I believe in school districts that stand for our children. Every single one of you took an oath. It's called the constitutional oath. That constitutional oath is God-given rights. I don't care if it's Whitmer. I don't care if it's Hackard. It's not a law. It's a suggestion. I was at that meeting today, thinking you were there maybe. They asked her specifically, if a school chooses not to follow the mandate, what do you do? She doesn't even know herself. Doesn't even know. You know what she said she'd do? She'd call the sheriff. You know what the sheriff standing next to me said? I won't be there. I took an oath. There's not a sheriff in this county or barely this state that's going to do anything. You know the next thing she said she was going to do? She'd send the school a fine, $2,000 a day, because that's what she's seen another state do. You know what they asked her? Who pays that fine for the school? She didn't know. You know who pays that fine? The state. The same parents who are paying their taxes. Guess what happens when they asked if the state chooses not to pay? What happens then to the school? What happens as the school gets shut down? What happens? She didn't know. She doesn't even know what she's doing. She is not OSHA certified. She might be a doctor. She might be a lawyer. She is not OSHA certified. OSHA certified people who go in and tell the hospitals and the doctors. The doctors don't know what mask they should wear, what mask work, what medical surgical equipment works. No, you know who comes in and tells them that?
I'm gonna have to ask you to
OSHA.
end, but thank you.
So you know what? The board is going to be checking into it. Until then, take the mask off the children.
Thank you.
Because she doesn't even know what she's doing.
Is there anyone else who'd like to comment?
My name is Christopher Betts. I've got 3 Swartz Creek graduates at home, well, one on his own finally, and I also have one in your junior class. I would like to share some facts with the board if that is all right. There was no intention on my part of speaking when I came in here tonight, but listening and watching what was going on here has prompted me to do so. About this pandemic and the mask mandate, let's talk about only facts. A mandate's not a law, for starters. The PCR tests are being discontinued in November because they're a proven track record of false positives. Anyone who has worked in a scientific lab knows that everything that's tested in that lab is tested against a certified standard. Yet there are no certified standards available anywhere for COVID-19. Every PCR test is being calibrated against a digital file. Even the CDC has been unable to isolate the COVID-19 virus. The PCR tests cannot differentiate between a common cold and influenza A, let alone identify a COVID-19, thus the discontinuation of the test this coming December, when the flu rates will come back to normal and COVID will disappear. As for the masks, as part of my job, I handle hazardous materials. I've been trained to use what's called a 4-gas meter. There's a wand on my 4-gas meter that I use as part of my job for testing for hazardous materials and oxygen-displaced atmospheres in confined spaces. Out of curiosity, I tested the atmosphere in a mask that I was wearing with the 4-gas meter, which was triggered immediately. As a oxygen-deficient atmosphere, I was able to duplicate the results repeatedly. The meter is a lifeline in my line of work. When the alarm goes off, I am trained to immediately move to a fresh air location. These masks are reducing the available oxygen for our children with still developing anatomy. These masks have also become more warm and moist when they're being warm. So they make an ideal breeding ground for bacteria. Now, I wouldn't accuse any of you of being antsy teenagers, except for baby Jack. Okay, so in the first hour of this particular meeting, Mr. Manka touched his mask 31 times, thus contaminating his hands with any bacteria that may have been on the mask, also contaminating the mask or the hands of the new hired teachers and anyone to his right, spreading the bacteria. These masks are doing more harm than good. Another fun fact about your masks, they can't stop a virus. The virus is smaller than the fibers that the masks are made out of. It's trying to keep mosquitoes out of your yard with a chain link fence. It's absolutely ridiculous. I encourage all of you to check on any of the facts that I've mentioned, including Mr. Manka's mask touching. I always hear that they want us to trust the science. I just wish they would. Thank you all.
Thank you for comments. Anyone else?
Hello. My name is Amanda Lamiel. I've lived in the district for 46 years, and you'll be happy to know I'm not here to talk about masks. You're not going to be quite pleased with what I have to say, but I myself, all my brothers and sisters, my oldest daughter, and my junior are all dragons. I've always been a dragon. I've never been this angry of a dragon. As a matter of fact, I've always been a huge supporter of all of you, most of you. I'm a fellow educator. I'm an advanced level crisis prevention intervention trainer, but I'm also a frontline activist. I'm a legal observer with the National Lawyers Guild, and I'm very much in support of our right to peacefully protest. My own kids have taken part in several peaceful protests at Swartz Creek. What happened that Friday was not a peaceful protest. Mr. Manka, you stated that the event was a learning experience. Swartz Creek safety protocols are very solid and clear. We shouldn't be learning safety during our school day. Finding out today that an administrator let them in has me absolutely shook. I just found out at this meeting, and I'm shook that an administrator let them in. They assaulted staff, they screamed profanities, they damaged property, and they caused many students incredible fear. You wanted to make this clear that it was not a lockdown. My question is why? Why, after this mob forced their way into our school and staff were assaulted, why was it not a lockdown? I wonder how many of you understand the fear students and staff experience when you realize it's not a drill. They're in your school. The fear that the staff realizing they're now responsible for every life in their classroom. This district's part in response to this event is absolutely unacceptable. We all knew the issues other districts had faced and the chaos that the unmasked community has caused within those schools. Not only did this district choose to do nothing about it in advance, but they chose not to communicate with us so we could make our choice for our kids whether they should have been there that day. There was potential problems allowing, sorry, excuse me. Okay. Just one final thing that I hope you all take part in the ALICE training so you can understand the fear that it feels like when there's somebody in your school and take the proper time that you need to learn safety, not during the school day. Thank you.
Okay, moving on. We have an opportunity for our board members for comments and questions. Anyone?
Thank you, Madam President. I asked you to speak on our behalf previously. That's my only comment.
Thank you. All right.
I just want to say thank you to everybody for their public comments.
Thank you, Jessica. I would also like to thank our staff, our summer school staff, and everyone who supported those efforts. We can't say it enough. And it's very exciting, I think, from our standpoint to see that where there was improvement or minimal slide in the students' learning. And that's, like everyone has said, it would be exciting if we could take some of those concepts and incorporate them into our day-to-day school life. So thanks again to everybody. I know it took a lot of effort. Go ahead, Chuck.
No, go ahead, Terry. You're Madam President. I cut in on some things.
No, go ahead, Chuck. I just wanted to make sure we captured that. And congratulations to all of our new staff who has, as they should have, gone home because they have a busy day tomorrow. But thanks, Dave, for being here too, and for others to be here and introduce the new staff. We really welcome them with open arms and very excited. I think during the break we were chatting about how we're also excited about the opportunities with VLC and the instructional coaching that will come along with Kevin Powers. So congratulations to everybody else. And go ahead, Chuck.
Okay, thank you, Carrie. Adrian's here, so maybe for next month you can give us a facility study on all of our fields, if that's okay with Ben and
homework.
RC. I was thinking about that because she came with some, facility suggestions at building committee. It maybe be more appropriate, but maybe at the next building committee, Adrian, if you're invited, you should bring that to us so the board as a whole can see where we're at and have some strategic planning for all of our fields, okay? Have kind of a few little things. Thanks for the summer school. The Gaines property. Ben, I'm going to ask a question. I know you're on it, but I brought this up 2 years ago because I want to own the property where we got people on our property doing goofy things, which is fine, I'm not into all that, but is that being sold soon?
Yes, it is. It's in the attorney's hands.
Okay, good, yeah, I want that. Am I all done, Carrie?
That was for 3 minutes, Chuck.
Your stuff's going on.
You only get-
I talk fast.
You only get a minute and a half.
You guys made me lose my train of thought now. Okay, great. The Mary Crapo building, I know we brought up, we've had the extensive discussion, but I would like it maybe put on the agenda next month for a vote. Hopefully we'll be over that deadline where they're at, Ben, if you could bring that to us. There is a program, if you guys recall, remember when I brought up the Humane Society and the dog reading and all that? That same meeting, I think it was in March of 2020 when they shut us down. I had a lady that was gonna come talk, and I want permission to have her come next meeting. Do you remember it, Ben? She talked to first, second, third, fourth graders. She has a program, little to no cost to the district. And I think it's even more important now for kids that maybe are being abused or neglected, because the school's really the only outlet that they can say something at. And this lady's developed a program in Tuscola and Lapeer County to help teachers, administrators, which they already recognize, I know they get the training, but to just give them a little extra push. And I think it's more important now during COVID, because a lot of these poor kids have been locked up at home and may not have been able to say, hey, something's happening that I need some help in. So I would like permission, or at least maybe, Carrie and Ben talk about it, to bring her in to give a short presentation, okay, if that's okay. With the board, I think everybody would be in agreement to protect our children. And I don't know if we really have a program, because we talked about this and we never really had an official program. I would like an official program to try to, for the kids that need the outlet to get some help, now that we're back in school. I didn't bring it up because we weren't back in school, and it was kind of a mute issue. The dog program, I'll defer to our liaison at the high school. Do we have enough mentors to go in with the third graders to read at the dog departments and to help the? Are you doing that, Mr. Szymanski? Simonson, yeah. Yeah.
He's our point of contact and organizing that, and absolutely, we have high school students who have hours that
Yes.
they need to accumulate for
Great.
service, and that's a great project for them, and many of them will be interested.
Thank you very much for your help on that. We'll get the third graders and 12th graders, 11th graders together. I want to make sure we're following up on that. And that's all I'm going to say. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you.
Yep.
I just want to let our audience know we appreciate your comments. This is a very challenging time for everybody. We hope that someday we can return to what we knew as normalcy and appreciate those times, again, all together as a community and come together as a community. So thanks for your comments and your interest in our students and the community. And with that, I would entertain a motion for, go ahead. Oh, sorry, Brian, I missed you.
I just want to reemphasize what's already been said, but I just want to reemphasize it. We really appreciate everybody's comment. We really do. We listen and we take to heart the things that are on people's minds and in their hearts, and the children. Safety first always. Summer school and VLC, incredible, incredible. I have huge hopes for the VLC, and we got that, all that new, that area over there, and then we've got the summer school. I'd love to see this every single summer, and I think we're going to have just incredible success as these students grow and develop through that program. And I really appreciate, Rod, you and your staff, and Ben, putting that on, standing behind it, supporting it, and the board. So thank you.
And I'm sorry, Carrie, when I mentioned earlier I didn't have any further comment, it was in response to the public comments. So for general board comments, I do have 3 now. So first of all, even you mentioned exciting to potentially get back to some normalcy. I actually wrote down, and thank you, Elena, for your feedback and giving us all of the fantastic things that are coming forward, kicking off with Spirit Week and Homecoming. And it's really exciting to hear all of the things that are happening that really do start to feel like we're sort of getting back to normal. It may be masked at the time, but having opportunities and kids back in school, the fact that the vast majority of our students return to our buildings speaks volumes, and I'm very excited for everything that we're going to do moving forward. Chuck, to your comment, I think that's fantastic to bring that program forward. I just ask her or offer the suggestion that maybe that's a great opportunity to bring her maybe to academic achievement, to evaluate the program itself, and then see how that may be incorporated, and then if so, bring it to the full board. Just so that can be kind of vetted a little bit prior would be my only suggestion. And then I forgot the last thing I was gonna say. It was about another committee. Oh, I'm sorry. I wanted to speak to you, and I apologize. I do not remember your first name. I appreciate your feedback, and I truly echo your statements, and do believe that we have an obligation to evaluate a little more deeply the transactions. And I think it's prudent for our policy committee to evaluate our current safety protocol and evaluate when there's an incident or look at that incident review process. So I'm making it known to you, but also to our public, that I do think we need to reevaluate, and I will take that charge on that. Thank you for bringing it forward.
Thanks, Alicia.
Now I'm done.
All right, so with that, I will entertain a motion for adjournment. That's a Chuck? I have a second?
Second.
Alicia, any comments or questions? Those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? We are adjourned.